recognized symbol of excellence in sports entertainment.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to My World. And of course, we couldn't do it without the Hall of Famer himself, the greatest professional wrestler of all time, your friend and mine, Double J, Jeff Jarrett. Jeff, how are you, man?
Connie, you got cabin fever, pal?
Bad. Got it bad. I left the house today for the first time. I'm so excited.
Folks that are listening to this as we record this, as Connie says, it is Sunday afternoon. The Lions are playing the Buccaneers. It's 3-3 into the first quarter. But to get a little bit granular here, if you will, in Nashville, looking out my back window, as Conrad likes to say, that there's a lake called Old Hickory Lake. Connie, it's frozen over.
Wow.
I don't think you could walk across it, but it's everywhere I look, I see ice. So yes, the big storm came on Monday. Conrad, man, what an incredible, crazy travel week. Everything was shut down in this town Monday, Tuesday. Kids they won't go to school for a month. They're out tomorrow. But went out to the airport in Nashville on Tuesday. It was beautiful. I got a good 6.5 hours in Nashville airport and boarded and got on there, and the de-icer machine, we went from 3 to 2 to 1, and the one that was remaining standing Tuesday night exploded, Conrad. This is the first time you're hearing this. I know the listeners, but yes. So it exploded, and it was a disaster. So got in the car, honey, I'm coming back home. She's like, what have you been doing for 6.5 hours? I said, well, those texts I've been giving you. Yep. We were in the lounge, and anyhow, went back out there with Karen on Wednesday morning. We were headed over to Charleston, South Carolina for Dynamite. What a hell of a show that ended up being. Nice numbers this week. And Connie, we got out there at like 5:30 because the 5:05 to Atlanta was sold out. So anyway, 5:30, 6:30, 7:30, 8:30, 9:30, 10:30, 11:30. Jay Lethal, he's just off his rocker. We'll get into that in a minute. But Sanjay Dutt and Karen were on this group text, and they just had a good old time because I was frustrated. I was ready to get out of there. But they just thought it would be a good time to, hey, Jeff, relax. Go eat another free meal at the Delta Lounge. Conrad, we stayed out there till 2:30 and said, well, this flight is still delayed. And when you get to Atlanta, you are now on the 7:30 from Atlanta going to Charleston, which will get you in there a little before 9. What? Anyway, even if we would have done, as we turned around and said, okay, that we're tried, and then that didn't even make it. So crazy travel day. Nashville has been snowed in. We're not prepared to get rid of it. And as we were talking before we got on the air, you folks that are maybe up in the Northeast or in the extreme Northwest, like, oh, you Nashvillians, you Southerners, you can't drive in the snow. It has nothing to do with driving in the snow. It has everything to do with equipment and who can drive on a solid sheet of ice. So anyway, Conrad, I'm tickled to death to be doing My World today. We're going to be talking about a great topic and all kinds of things, but tell me a little bit about your cabin fever, pal.
Well, I finished The Sopranos. I started it when my wife and I were down in Miami, and we were just watching HBO on the TV. And as she took a nap, I fired up regular hotel television, which I haven't done in a while. And there was The Sopranos. And I found myself just being like, man, I really dig this. Wasn't planning on sitting down and watching, but normally my television viewing becomes appointment TV. Oh, I know I want to watch this. So let me go sit down and get the wife and dogs together and let's watch that. But just passively in the background, I love The Sopranos again. So when I got stuck in this week, I just doubled down and I revisited the last few seasons and I finished it. So the really controversial ending I got to watch again. And I got to say, I've come around on it. So I enjoyed The Sopranos.
Who's your favorite? Who's your favorite?
My favorite character?
Yeah.
Oh, Tony. I love Tony.
Okay.
I love Paulie Walnuts. I think Paulie's just super fun. He's a scene stealer, but no, Tony's my dude. I enjoy his dynamic. I think they did a great job with Artie. There's a lot of really fun supporting roles there. Highly recommend it. What I don't recommend though is running out of propane. Jeff, as you know, I live here on the mountain, so they couldn't actually get gas to my street.
Oh,
So what the builder of my home did is he buried an 800-gallon gimmick of propane. So there's this giant buried tank behind my house, huge, 800 gallons. And I'm watching TV on Thursday night, got the logs going, the
no,
gas logs, and poop,
no.
they go out. And I tell Megan, I say, hey, that ain't a good sign. I think we just ran out of propane. She goes, no, you just had them on too long. They turn off after they've been on a long time. I go, yeah, I know that. They've only been on about 20 minutes. So she turns it on the stove and she's like, we got gas. You're overreacting. So we start watching TV, and a little later I hear beep, 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 beep. And I'm like, do you hear
Oh,
that? She doesn't. I follow the sound. It's my tankless water heater giving me a heads up that, hey, we're out of propane over here. So I called and ordered propane, requested the rush delivery because they're like, you're not on our route until next Thursday. I go, well, that won't do. So let me go ahead and pay a rush fee. No problem. $255 will be there tomorrow. Okay, cool. Can you come today? Maybe, but definitely tomorrow. They didn't show. So I called back the next day. Hey, just checking in. We'll be there today. Absolutely. They didn't show.
nope.
So I called the third day. Not today either. So maybe tomorrow. So as I'm talking to you, my wife has slipped and slid down the hill to my parents' house, and she's getting her shower for the first time since Thursday night. How about that? That's what we're doing for Snowmageddon, my man.
No. Would you also hear? It's Snowvid, not COVID.
Snowvid. Yeah. So we haven't been able to use the stove since Thursday afternoon. So we have Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night. Use the air fryer and or the grill. We got the Rectech in the back, got the air fryer. We've managed to make it work pretty well, I gotta say. But today my dad said, hey, I've had enough. I'm venturing out. You want to ride around? And I said, sure.
Big Lair threw the gauntlet down today.
Came in with the 4-wheel drive, had a great time. First place he wanted to go, Waffle House.
That's my man. That is Big Lair.
By the way, not a soul in there. So you never see that. An empty Waffle House on a weekend. That doesn't happen, but it did today.
Still this long after.
Yeah.
That's
Dude,
crazy.
it's wild. It's wild.
Hey, actually, we had like our town, people can't even relate to this. So maybe it's amusing to some folks that are, maybe like in Iowa where they get hit with snow all the time, or up north or whatever. They're like, well, yeah, our town, like McDonald's. And I said, honey, you've got to be kidding me. It's really close. Yeah. This is like Tuesday. It snowed Sunday evening and all day Monday, and 8 inches is a lot around here. But by Tuesday afternoon, I'm thinking everything. She goes, are you kidding me? Nothing. I'm like, what is wrong with the world? Anyhow, don't have the equipment. And the fun stuff about this is that we don't really budget in Middle Tennessee or Tennessee for have a lot of snowfalls. And so they buy a limited amount of salt to clear the roads, and we only have limited amount of plows, and a lot of them they just hook the plow up on front of the big old 4-wheel pickup. It's not really a plow like you see up north. But I was informed there's several counties in Middle Tennessee that went through their entire allotment of salt on this here 4 or 5 day excursion. So if we get another one, fun. So yes,
I'm friends with a sportscaster here in town, and he checked on me a few days in, and he said, hey man, people in the newsroom are saying the city bought the wrong stuff. That's the reason we're in the shape we're in. So I'm sure somebody somewhere is going to tell that story. I don't know that they actually ran that story on the news, but they have that information, and somebody somewhere might be losing a gig over this, but
that's
maybe
fun.
you can invite them to your big event, because I know you've got something big cooking with Shoes Baseball. What can you tell us about the big event?
I was trying to give you the eye sign. A little early. I'll
No, a lot of chatter. Shoes Baseball.
Shoes Baseball. You can go to Shoes Baseball on Twitter, on Instagram. The website's got it all. We are really cranking up this year. We've got all kinds of events, but we are announcing a huge event, Conrad, that's going to be right up your alley. And you are Pal, you teed that up. I'll just say, give me another week or two, and we'll talk about it. But we're just not quite ready. So I appreciate the. You almost let the cat out of the bag, but we're just going to leave it right there, pal. Leave it right
Well,
there.
in the meantime,
You've got a big weekend coming up.
Do I? Of
Wait.
course, I'm kidding.
Yeah, I was
It's
going to
Royal
say.
Rumble weekend. We're doing a little Top Guy Rumble down in Tampa. Going to have a lot of fun. The schedule has been released to everyone who's joining us, and you should make plans to join us and be a part of what we're doing. Like even in our live chat right now, if you were a part of adfreeshows.com, you could be joining my man PJ Taints or Alex Wheaton or little Jimmy Sorensen or Coach Keith. We're all having a lot of fun here. You don't just get bonus content like Beyond Nitro or the book with David Crockett, or how about Tuesdays with the Taskmaster? What about Monday Mailbag with Mike Chioda and Nick Patrick? How about Lex Express? We sit down with Lex Luger every single month. All of that and more as a part of adfreeshows.com. But we have a few get-togethers. Last year we had a big get-together and we did it here in Huntsville and got people in the ring. This year we're going to do multiple events, getting it kicked off with the Royal Rumble this weekend. And Jeff, the entire wrestling world is abuzz about the Royal Rumble. You yourself have been to a few Royal Rumbles over the years. What are some of your favorite Rumble memories, and what did you think of the Rumble as a fan? And then once you got there and you were part of the WWF machine during the new generation era, did it still feel like a big deal, the Royal Rumble?
Well, first off, let's just talk about what you just said, Top Guy Weekend. I'm wishing all of you folks that are part of this family. Obviously, I will not be there this weekend. I've got other duties, some AEW duties, and I got some personal matter duties. But so I wish everybody, it is, as I said, oh gosh, over 2 years ago when Connie finally talked me into doing my world. I said, my God, this is the best value in professional wrestling business today. It really is. And weekends like this are what make it special. The old MasterCard commercial, it's candidly priceless, the memories you create, Conrad, or a part of creating. But Conrad, as we're going to be talking about 2004 and the early days of TNA, you maybe not specifically today, but throughout 2024, when we talk about our TNA times, you will see how big of a fan I am of the concept. I think Pat Patterson, beyond brilliant. It is so engaging, you know, when you do the Nielsen research and the data and look at all that and really see minute by minutes and see how high that from the time that a talent music's hit until the time the bell rings, how minute by minutes the ratings are fantastic. And when the bell starts, there's always some kind of loss in viewership, and they kind of come back around in the finish. And certainly they after the bell's rung, you can just kind of see some minute by minutes go up and up, generally speaking. So I think that speaks right to the Royal Rumble. Every 90 seconds or 60 or 2 minutes, whatever the intervals are, it's tailor-made. It's the simple pop. It puts everything kind of up on the table that there's a surprise. People love talent. Love surprises involving talent. And you have this. And, you know, when you do different promos, and we called them at TNA Gauntlet for the Gold, had a little bit different twist onto it, but basically the general concept. And Conrad, first one that I was a part of was 1994, Providence, Rhode Island. I got to be eliminated by the Macho Man Randy Savage. You can imagine how I felt about that, Connie. I loved every minute of it. I was involved with we were Taker and Yoko. I think, they were in the middle of their program. So I was knocked around by Taker, and we stuffed him in the casket. There was a big 7 or 8 heels. But anyway, I love the concept. Really just can't say enough good about Patterson's, the brainchild of it, the mindset of it. And it goes without saying how the match itself is, as any storyteller would tell you, matchmaker, booker, creative guy, when you can create stakes that really mean something, you've got something that the people want to watch. And that's, again, as time went on and Man, the history of the Royal Rumble, Conrad, is so cool. It was a free event. Opposite helped me out because it was opposite of it was on USA Network, opposite of
Bunkhouse
a
Stampede.
Turner. Okay.
Bunkhouse Stampede.
Yeah, but it was opposite of a WCW event or NWA event at the time. It was
Yeah.
made to counter program, and what a counter programming, because you could not turn away. I think Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Man, I'm really going on a tangent here. Hacksaw Jim Duggan. So obviously, I don't like the match, but Duggan won the first one, I believe. But no, it's fantastic. It's so exciting when you develop kind of a tradition and history, the stakes and the roadmap. It's done very, very well. So this is, yeah, when you just kind of step back and look at 2023 and how the business evolved and everything. And now here we are at the beginning of 2024 ourselves. We've got Sting's retirement. We've got Forbidden Door. We've got Wembley. We've got on and on and on. WWE Royal Rumble and the Mania. They've got that little show over in Australia. So it is professional wrestling season, and I think a lot of, I've got the NFL playoffs on in the corner, and Kittle played last night. He's a big wrestling fan. It's just, this is the time of professional wrestling. Q1 of every year really cranks things up. And so I'm fired up for it, man.
Let's talk about the Rumble this weekend. What do you think? Roman Reigns finds himself in a 4-way against AJ Styles, LA Knight, and darn it, who's the other competitor? Oh, Randy Orton. So AJ, Randy, and LA Knight against Roman. Who do you think picks up the dub there?
Oh, that's a given. LA Knight gets to have. He will look the best out of all, but I kind of think it's a no-brainer. Roman continues the march, but it'll be very entertaining. But that match will do exactly what it's designed to do.
What about in the Rumble itself? It's what everybody's focused on. We know that Drew McIntyre has declared. We know that Cody Rhodes has declared. We know that CM Punk has declared, Shinsuke Nakamura, a handful of others. Who do you think wins the Rumble this weekend?
This is what's fun. I've been doing this 37 years, actively involved in the business. And obviously I'm on the outside looking in. And so my guess is exactly like the top guys that may be listening in to our podcast today, or to the viewer that watches on Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays, and everything like that. But the winner, Connie, I'm just going to go out on a limb here, and I don't say get creative because it's getting you creative, but I'll go the wild card. Brock's coming back and winning.
Wow. Okay. How about that?
Didn't have that on your bingo card, did you?
No, but that would be fun. I can't wait to see what happens. It's going to be a fun time. We hope you guys are fired up and ready to go. It's always maybe my favorite pay-per-view of the year. I mean, obviously the spectacle and how special WrestleMania is, but as far as an individual match, this is the match I look forward to more than any other match, because we don't know exactly what the main event of WrestleMania is. Lots of people have guesses. We don't know way in advance what's going to headline Wrestle Kingdom or Forbidden Door or Double or Nothing or All In or All Out. We don't know. But we know that we're getting that Rumble, that men's Rumble match. And we know it's going to be special. I can't wait. I know the ladies are going to have a lot of fun too, but I just grew up on the men's, and I don't know. I've got a soft spot in my heart for that one. 92 and 97 were two of my absolute favorite years. Of course, John Cena's big return in 08 got huge reactions. When Edge came back a few years ago, nobody saw that coming. I'm excited for the Royal Rumble this weekend. And I'm excited to have Jeff Jarrett tell you about how he's keeping that dick hair so trim. It's thanks to manscaped.com. Cheers to the new year from our friends at Manscaped, because your resolutions shouldn't be the only things that are well kept. 2024 is the time for new heights, new opportunities, and a new look for your Times Square balls. Manscaped's Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra is every man's cheat code to look good, feel good, and turn the page on confidence this year. Whether you're looking to maintain or trim or go for that clean shaven look, this trimmer has you covered. Trusted by over 10 million men worldwide. Now is your time to get a grip on your grooming with this exclusive offer. Just go to manscaped.com and use our code MyWorld. You'll get 20% off plus free shipping. Happy New Year or happy new balls. The MVP of 2024 is without question Manscaped's 5th generation lawnmower. It's not just a trimmer, it's like your grooming sidekick. It's got not one, but 2 skin-safe blade heads, a standard one to take a little off the top, and the new foil blade to go smooth wherever your heart desires. It's like having a personal stylist at your fingertips or, well, wherever you need it. Did we mention this dude's also waterproof? Because a trim in the shower is the only way to start your day. And you can also look no further than Manscaped's Performance Package 5.0 if you're looking for the full grooming experience. Inside that kit, not only is the lawnmower and the ear and nose hair trimmer, but also your essential aftercare products like the Crop Soother Ball Aftershave Lotion or the Crop Preserver Anti-Chafing Ball Deodorant. That's right, deodorant for your balls. I bet you didn't think you needed that, but your wife probably thinks you do. As a gesture for the new year, get 2 free gifts. How about Boxers 2.0 and the Shed 2.0 travel bag? Let's face it, resolutions come and go, but a well-groomed you is here to stay thanks to Manscaped. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code MyWorld at manscaped.com, because nothing says Happy New Year like a deal that leaves your balls in your budget feeling refreshed. That's Manscaped. Embrace a new you and definitely embrace a new trimmer. Manscaped.com, that promo code MyWorld gets 20% off plus free shipping. So Jeff, you've raised more than your fair share of girls. Is that fair to say? You've been a girl dad for most of your parenting career?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Where are you going with this?
I'm just wondering.
As you lead out of Manscaped, promo code MyWorld.
Well, I'm just wondering, have you had the conversation with Cody where you had to sit him down and sort of explain the phrase, pull them tight? Have you had to have the pull them tight conversation with Cody yet?
Not yet. That's on the docket.
It's got to be getting close.
Yeah.
The pull them tight conversation. And I'm wondering, when you have that conversation, are you then going to give him the gift that keeps on giving, the Manscaped 5.0? It feels like it's time for Cody to get a lawnmower this year.
I think, you know what?
Yeah. He's hitting pull them tight age.
Oh, my man Coaster, he may give me a little look. I mean, and Johnny, you know what? I think there's some conversations that just come across better. That
right.
It's like the message is delivered more clearly.
Yes.
When you have like an uncle.
I got you, man. I can't wait for Hermie Sadler to sit Cody down.
Oh, I want Uncle Connie to come up and say, Codes, last year when we watched Wembley together.
Yes.
Just open the conversation there and just keep rolling right on into the lawnmower discussion. What do you think?
Can't wait. I'm looking forward to teaching Cody all about pull them tight.
Just bring Skittles, Doritos, and you're off to the races.
We don't need any extra barbecue for him. He don't need that at all. I learned very quickly that turkey and chicken are in abundance in Hendersonville. But damn it, Skittles just tumbleweeds
there. What are you talking about?
I didn't know. I just had those movie theater snacks, so I didn't know. And boy, it was like a damn Tajiri buzzsaw just came through, knocked him out. It was great.
When he saw those, lights out, buddy. Lights
out.
Yeah,
he was way more excited about that than Sting coming out to the Metallica song. Didn't give a rip about that anymore. Listen, go get your tickets right now. You do want to be a part of AEW history. Sting's last match is upon us. I know you may have heard it's sold out. Keep checking back. Production kills are real.
We're I didn't want to cut you off, but little by little, few here, few there, few there. What a hot ticket, dude. What a hot ticket. I'll just leave it at that. You can keep going. Sorry to interrupt.
You want to say you were there. This is one of those type deals where people will wind up printing their tickets out and getting it framed. You want to be able to say you were there. AEWTIX.com. It really is that big of a deal. And you get to see them before then in Savannah tomorrow. Check it out. AEWTIX.com. And before you know it, Jeff, you're going to be right down the street from me in Huntsville. How about that?
Can't wait, Connie. Kind of letting the cat out of the bag. I'll be down there earlier doing a media day. I believe we've got a media day in the works. So I am probably going to be kind of like on a scavenger hunt, looking for a guy they professionally known in the Huntsville market as Casio. So
I'd be glad to be your driver. I can navigate you to these nook and crannies, and I'll keep the car running. And when you come out, I'll have a Chick-fil-A grilled chicken salad. I know what you like.
Here's what I'm wondering is, do you think we could have a presser, invite all the media to one place, or, all the out, Gunnersville and the small towns around that have the local papers or maybe a local radio? I'll be willing and ready. If you don't mind, talk to our folks over at G's. And I'll just that table to the left as we walk in. I'll just kind of set up shop over there. I can probably eat a late breakfast and an early lunch, and I'll come back at closing to get to go. So if we can work that in the media day, it'd be great.
My man Maurice already knows that you want, as his girl said, the whole damn chicken. So we're gonna have some fun with that. Be sure to join us in Huntsville. AEWTIX.com. Jeff, there's been some sleeper stuff announced. I can't believe this is real, but we got Sting and Darby Allin on the card. We got Jeff Hardy one-on-one with Swerve Strickland. We got Penta taking on Adam Page, and I can't believe this is a real match. Minoru Suzuki and the former Edge, Adam Copeland, is wrestling Minoru Suzuki this week. AEW has, they're bringing the noise with some dream matchups right now. Some of that stuff I didn't have, as even a possibility. Suzuki and Edge. I want to give you some credit too, because last week here on the program, we're talking about old school TNA. The subject of Samoa Joe came up, and you made it very clear that you felt like Samoa Joe had a special quality that you had seen before in Jerry Lawler, where he could actually go over, but also help his opponent get over. And that's a pretty cliche thing that a lot of wrestling fans have heard. It doesn't matter who goes over, but who gets over. But I think we saw a great example of that after folks heard that on a Tuesday, the very next day, because Samoa Joe and Hook, man, had a lot of people talking, almost unanimous praise I saw. What'd you think of the job that Samoa Joe did with a very young Hook?
God, this sounds so pompous, but it's like, it didn't surprise me at all.
Right.
It just didn't. I mean, I am a firm believer in Joseph. No, Samoa Joe, he is a born entertainer. He has a look. He's developed a cadence, if you will, to his style. The walk away, I'll call it the Joe strut around the ring, the little nuances. I'm just saying that these are, I don't say they're new to folks, but these are kind of getting some of their recognition right now. But I saw that way back. It's the stuff that you do when the camera's on you and either your opponent's selling or whatever it is, but it's the little nuances that Joe, the art of it. I'll say that Joe is an artist, and that sounds so, oh man, that may not go over with some folks and rub people the wrong way, but Joe is an artist, and Joe has a style, and I keep using the word cadence, that to me, you can do so many different things and the camera can't read it all or can't stay focused. Joe, if you're sitting in the camera directing a Joe match, you don't have to overthink it. You know exactly how to go grab the emotion. And that's what it's about. When you have a talent like Joe, he helps. Not only does all of his work, he does his opponents. And man, this is so inside baseball, but he can do his opponent's work. He makes the referee better, but he also makes the cameraman and the producer and the director and all that, because he is truly kind of playing his own orchestra. And I think there is such an art that you just don't develop that. I don't care who you are. That you don't develop that overnight. That doesn't come in months. That comes in years. And it's one of those things that, Joe's he's easy in over 20 years, right? Yeah, I'm sure he started.
Yeah, he's over. Yeah.
He's well over 20 years. So the match, I was tickled to death. For Hook, it's the follow-up. It's all in the follow-up. Because it goes without saying, as time will tell, you go, oh, Joe did that. And especially the sophisticated audience today, as the days and weeks roll by, I'm hoping like hell Hook has a strategy to follow up on it, because momentum is super, super hard, especially nowadays, to get. And once you get it, man, hammer down. But hats off to all involved. Fantastic. And it's one of those things that you cannot duplicate. Live TV on a Wednesday night, and the big fight feel and the build up to it. It was special. And we were sitting here talking about our guesses for the Rumble, or the excitement of, Hook kicking out on one, all those kind of things. It's why I'm a wrestling fan. I love the stuff.
And we love Samoa Joe. Glad to see him getting his flowers. It's a phrase that, we probably haven't used about Joe in a while, but man, he's been so good for so long. I'm really glad that people are recognizing that, and he's got this opportunity. And I'm thrilled for Taz. I mean, I can't imagine the sense of pride. I mean, I looked it up the other day because Eric wanted to talk about it on his podcast, 83 Weeks. I think Hook has only had 48 matches, according to Cage Match. So to be in a television main event with 48 matches under your belt, or 47 at the time, man, that's pretty wild. I mean, that's not something that happens in a lot of places where you have just a handful of matches and you've given that opportunity, but that stress as well, right?
See, that's where the business has changed. So total 47 matches.
Before that was his 48th match. Yeah. So before that, 47 matches.
So
I mean, that would have been back in the day for you, what, 6 weeks, 7 weeks in the business?
Yes, that I was kind of doing that math right there.
He's been in the business now for over 2 years, but we're talking about you would have got that amount of matches under your belt in weeks.
Yeah,
not years.
Yeah, that's why the business. But to watch live wrestling back then, you had to go to your own show and watch. Now, YouTube, you can watch decades of not just one promotion, multiple promotions, and you can watch wrestling 24/7, 365, and still won't get enough of it. And all the shows out there. So the business and that's the thing that you got to. Well, Connie, we've talked about this. How bad do you want it? How bad do you really want it as a young talent? And so I hope today, like right now, I hope Hook is trying to think about, how am I going to get better? He's got charisma. You just don't go out and have that kind of reaction.
That's right. He's got charisma. He's got the presentation down. To your point, though, 48 matches. He's going to need some more reps, but he's so young. I mean, I think dude's like 24. Like,
if
imagine how good he's going to be in 10 years. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It's exciting to think about. Let's talk about 20 years ago.
Oh, this is crazy, Connie.
Right?
20. It boggles my mind when have we really? I don't know. We hadn't talked about Dolph or Nick Nemeth. We hadn't talked.
He's an Impact now, or TNA rather.
That's what I'm saying. Just and look, I've probably I don't say a boatload, but I've gotten my fair share of direct messages, texts, a few. Look, I've always been a fan. I'll call him Dolph's work, but him appearing on that show, and I know he appeared a week or so before that in New Japan Wrestle Kingdom, but just kind of the timing and TNA's back, that's kind of the deal. I don't want to compare it to that, but when you have kind of a rebrand or a reboot, and you do have the 1-2 punch of a surprise talent that I don't think anybody was calling, I'm happy for those guys. I mean, it's kind of crazy. And somebody sent me the cold open or the show open. Are they going back to cross that line, or is that a one-time deal?
They are. Yeah.
I mean, I can remember the first time Dale Oliver and me, we were just all the formation and the creation, and they were going to shoot the video and all that kind of stuff. It's crazy that, well, that wasn't 20 years ago, but here we are today, Conrad. We're going to be talking about some crazy stuff that happened at TNA at the Asylum. 2004 were the last years in the Asylum. So, man, it's 20 years ago. I mean, hell, we're just talking about Hook. He's just a little older than 20,
That's the thing. Okay. Like, it's crazy to think how fast this time goes. And we're talking about performers who were in the main event. I mean, that dude, he ain't even in school yet. and we're talking about what you were doing. You're right on the heels here of your negotiation with Hulk Hogan. We've covered that on our Flirting with Hogan episode, which is available now at myworldonyoutube.com. But as 2004 is starting, TNA is deep in negotiations regarding the future and the business model of the company. That is, according to the Torch. Wade would write, TNA sources say the negotiations with WGN are ongoing. Panda officials are considering the idea of going with the half-hour time slot rather than a full hour in an attempt to cut their programming fees in half. TNA officials have yet to officially address the WGN rumors via a wrestler meeting, but both Dixie Carter and Jeff Jarrett have mentioned it during one-on-one conversations with certain wrestlers. So talk to me about WGN and what you guys were aiming for and what was considered with this half hour, because an hour would have felt short. A half hour, maybe that's the definition of leaving them wanting more. Talk me through that.
And as I was diving into this, and there may be some folks in this day and age listening to this podcast that can kind of reference WGN, but TBS, which evolved, which started, that's what obviously Dynamite is on now. But years ago, as cable TV was exploding or launching, TBS was a superstation, and out of Atlanta. And Ted Turner, the founder, said it himself. There's three things that he literally, launched TBS on: Andy Griffith, Atlanta Braves, because there was 162 games, and professional wrestling. WGN, based out of Chicago, was also another classic, legendary, whatever you want to, local station that was on every cable system. They had the Cubs. They had, I don't say exactly, but a very similar kind of, if you had cable, you had WGN. It had a well above 90, I want to say above 95% clearance or carriage in cable homes coast to coast. And their leadership was they were just different. But our mindset was, how can we basically get on there, Conrad, and have a half hour, if you will, infomercial to promote our Wednesday night pay-per-views. And, we, of course, if they would have been interested in, if we could have walk, crawl, run and got to a licensing, but that wasn't in their mindset. Their paid time was super expensive, but we were in discussions with them on how to make it work. In 2004, I'm probably going to get fuzzy on the dates, but me and my father had brought potential new investors at the table, and Carter's had zero interest in that. Matter of fact, ran them off, and we've discussed that in the archives. But they were engaged in a high level on how do we grow this? What are the next steps? So, WGN was one of the concepts or ideas that we were taking a hard look at on how could we do this still on I'll call it a limited budget, but how do we make this work?
Well, we know that it didn't wind up happening. We also know from the Torch this report. This week's Vince Russo rumor is that Dixie Carter actually invited him to return to the booking team once the negotiations with Hogan were put on hold, but that Russo actually turned her down. Apparently, Russo has made it known he's not interested in working with Jeff Jarrett. While it's always possible that Jarrett and Russo will work through their differences, one source said that won't be as easy as most people think it will be. Quote, "It's going to be very hard to mend fences with Jeff and Vince right now," said the source. The key to a Jarrett Russo reconciliation could be Glenn Gilberti, who's still on good terms with Russo while also being an active member of Jarrett's creative team. What's up with the falling out here? Was Vince feeling territorial that maybe you picked Hogan instead of him, or what's the issue?
Yeah, it was, that was among other things. And again, to have complete clarity, I'm sure there were other issues there, but for the most part, creative was set up at this time. We did our show on Wednesday, and Thursdays we would all, and I say all, Jeremy Borash, Glenn Gilberti, Dixie, Jimmy Hart from time to time. I think Bill Banks was on board. I don't know if Mike Tenay was staying over yet. Dutch Mantel, of course. And so we kind of would get in the room and have our creative sessions on what are we going to do next week. Well, when the Hogan situation I don't say the end, but in 2003, he made it real clear up front, I'm not working with Russo. And you got to remember 2003 to 2000, back to what would that have been? July of 2000 and the litigation.
That's right.
There was super bad blood between Vince and Hulk, and Bob Carter wanted growth, and Hogan was one of a couple of ideas on growth, and those were his ground rules. And it was a business decision. I get it. I've taken business decisions personal more than once. Vince took it personal and looked at it that you're going to pick Hulk Hogan over me. Screw you. And that's kind of where he sat for a while.
I know you're a wrestling junkie. Did you happen to catch any of the interview or any of the clips on social of Chris Van Vliet talking to Brian Pillman Jr.?
Ooh, I don't. I see Chris Van Vliet stuff all the time. See, jog my memory, and I'll tell you if I've seen.
Well, I thought you would have been fascinated with this because he talked about, and he was sort of comparing AEW and WWE without actually saying that, but he was saying that in AEW there was a little more creative freedom, so he found himself pitching, sort of advocating for himself, whether it was him and Griff Garrison or adding a female to the mix and their presentation and all that sort of thing. Whereas he says in WWE, John Cena came and talked to him in NXT and spoke to the whole group and basically said, don't ever pitch any ideas. That's not your job. And when you pitch ideas, it rubs people who do that for a living the wrong way. So you can't control what your creative is going to be. You can only control how you're perceived to the people who do that creative. The idea being, whatever they hand you, just go crush it. And when he was making the analogy, when I was the rap guy, it was my job to be the best rap guy. And so when they needed a rap guy for a story, I'd be the best one. And I thought that was interesting, and an interesting way to sort of compare and contrast the different styles of wrestling, because on the independents, largely you are sort of coming up with some of your own creative. But when you get plugged into a system, whether it's an Impact or a WWE or an AEW, some of that creative is done for you. And I find that interesting as a topic to discuss, especially when it relates to like Hulk Hogan and Vince Russo. One guy famously always had creative control, and the other guy famously did not like that. You've seen it both ways. Where do you land on that? And I know you didn't actually hear it from the horse's mouth, but Brian Pillman via John Cena. Just go run the play.
Yeah. I don't think we have enough time, Conrad, to get into this. But you know, what's my thought? I think that's your general question. What's my thoughts on it, right?
Yes.
I've heard okay, Conrad, it's a great topic, and we can maybe do a sidebar here. But I think if you really looked at Hulk Hogan's career, I bet he's more successful when he's being produced and he's not exercising his creative control. I think that goes across the board for any talent at all times. I can vividly remember on more than one occasion Dutch Mantell coming to me saying, "Hey, this guy's this and this guy's that. I don't think they want to do what you want, Jeff." Well, Dutch, what do you think? What do you think? And he goes, "I think you ought to go in there and tell them, hey, if you don't like it, get your own money and go start your own wrestling company like I did, and then come talk to me." Because, you know, Dutch was, man, I can hear Eric Young and Bobby Roode because it became kind of a running joke. Dutch had a saying, "Hey, boys, just go run the effing play."
Yeah.
I mean, just over and over and over. So I think here's the what I think is optimal. I think a talent can maybe not pitch. I hear where John's coming from, but collaborate after the pitch has been made and say, "Hey, baby, I can do it here better," or whatever. I think it's very, very important for talent to take something and make it their own. I mean, I think the best promos, Ric Flair or Roddy Piper or Jerry Lawler, have all come from a producer. You know, my dad producing Lawler saying, "Hey, Jerry, kind of get to point A to point B to point C, but you do it the way you think you need to do it." And then they crush it. So I think everybody has to be produced. I think that's when the best work is done. Word for word, not a fan of that. A talent completely producing themselves, I think it is, you miss the mark so many times. I know that I've been heavily criticized at times, this and that. People that were there, that were in the know, they will know that at the end of the day, I took input from anybody, but it's my company and I had to do what I thought was best. But I did not produce myself. Dutch and Vince and others, a lot of input. Here's my pet peeve on all of it. Once it's decided, and I like to have it decided, if not 24 hours, at least 2 or 3 days in advance, 24 hours at the very least. But when it becomes show day and you're still talking creative, it's impossible to run a successful play. It just doesn't work. It's a recipe for absolute failure. But generally speaking, Conrad, as you always ask me what time it is, and I'll tell you how to build a watch, I think run the play. I think Cena is spot on because in the world we live in, and I say in the professional wrestling world we live in, you have a 2-hour show. Friday night's a 1-hour show, but you have a show. If you only think about your segment and you have no idea what the other 6, 7, 8 segments are, it not only just bad continuity, bad context. It is such a choppy novel, if you will. It's like having 7 authors to a short story. It's impossibly good. It just is. It's the stew being made on Sunday afternoon. If you have 7 chefs go up and cook it, it's going to be terrible. So I'm a big proponent of run the damn play.
Well, we know what play you run in the bedroom. Thanks to our friends at Blue Chew, we're running it straight up the middle, Daddy. That's what we do. Little old school Alabama football. Hand off to the left, hand off to the right. Just drive it up the gut. Thanks to Blue Chew, you can do that. It's a unique online service that has the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra, but a chewable form and at a fraction of the cost. You can take them anytime, day or night. So plan ahead or be ready whenever an opportunity arises. And the process is simple. Sign up at BlueChew.com, consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. Here's the best part. It's all done online. So no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversation, and no waiting in line at the pharmacy. Blue Chew's tablets are made right here in the USA, prepared and shipped directly to your door, all in a discreet package. But there won't be anything discreet about your package. Hit Jeff's finisher, the stroke, because Blue Chew wants to help you have better sex. Discover your options at BlueChew.com and then chew it and do it. Amanda, we have a special deal for our listeners. Try Blue Chew free when you use our promo code MyWorld at checkout. Just pay $5 shipping. That's BlueChew.com. The promo code is MyWorld and you'll receive your first month free. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. And we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring today's podcast. Jeff, let's talk about the Insane Clown Posse. Makes the torch here that they're set to debut at the January 7th show. And Wade would write the rappers / wannabe wrestlers are on the booking sheets as wrestlers, but it's not clear with whom they will be working or how many appearances they're scheduled for. There's been some talk of adding Slash, aka Wolfie D, to ICP's act so that he could handle most of the in-ring workload. However, Slash may have hurt his chances being brought back by acting disruptive, and that's putting it nicely, at the holiday party. So just to explain, I know the Insane Clown Posse have their own following. I mean, literally, it's a band of super fans. It's almost like a little community, the Juggalos. And of course, they have their big event every year, and it's a massive draw. And this could be an opportunity to get some of those fans to watch TNA. So I get that. And I know you're pals with Wolfie D, and I love the idea of putting him with them. I could totally see that working. But boy, I hate to be Jim Barnett, but I can't wait to hear the dirt about this holiday party.
Conrad, I wish I could recall, but more than that, I wish I had time to call Wolfie. There's no telling, but there was a yearly Christmas party at Dixie's house. You know what we need to do?
What do we
Derek,
need to do?
Get your pen and paper out. And let's just think of how we can go about this. You're going to have to kind of cast a wide net, and maybe it's anonymous, but let's just come up with a podcast and call it Christmas Party Chaos, because it happened every
chaos at the Carters. Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
Every year, though, somebody would have too much to drink and show their ass.
Conrad. Our mutual friend, I guarantee you he can come up with 7 or 8 stories, because it was a running bet. Oh boy, who's going to do it this year? Who's going to do it that year? And I was kind of oblivious to it the first couple of years. I was like, what are you talking about? Oh yeah. Don't you remember this year? And as I'm sitting here talking about this, I can already remember 3 All-Stars. So we may need to change the names to protect the innocent, but we can tell the story. But Johnny, it was every year somebody fell out of the boat. Every year.
I love it.
But Wolfie, here's what I'm wondering. So, okay, hold on. Now we're talking 2 different things, because Dixie that was for employees. No, there was some talent that would come, but we also had on the Wednesday nights. Yeah. Okay. Wednesday nights, wherever Christmas fell that year, but regardless, the Wednesday before Christmas, I'm sure we would have our party. So my gut tells me tequila was involved. The cops were involved, a couple of fights. And I would say that's on the agenda with Wolfie.
Allegedly, your dad did not attend, and Wade would say this is the 2nd year in a row. So of course that would have been the holiday party 03. So 2nd year in a row means he's never been to one at all. He didn't come to the 02 or the 03 holiday party. Is that you remember that?
I chuckled and kind of, and look, you're better at this than I do, but when you kind of read through, either it's Dave notes or Keller's notes or whoever notes, you kind of go, oh, okay, so he's talking to him like that. Now, can you see old JW at this point? He's in his early 60s, going to any Christmas party?
Not where there's going to be wrestlers and cops and fighting. No.
That's what I'm saying. That's my point. Yeah, yes. Well, hell no, but Wade made it a point. This is the second year in a row Jarrett didn't go.
Well, that little tip was brought to you by a 615 area code. The Torch would also say, although the talk of Hulk Hogan signing with TNA has died down considerably, the company is still moving forward with plans to hold a Sunday night 3-hour pay-per-view event. TNA officials are still planning to hold at least one traditional Sunday night pay-per-view as early as this summer, but there is some concern as to whether Sunday night events will hurt the buy rate for the Wednesday shows. But TNA officials are said to be set on moving forward with the experiment. So we all know that eventually or along the way, the plan was we were going to do a Bound for Glory 3-hour Sunday. It was going to be you and Hulk Hogan. We know that's on hold. It's not happening for now. But this 3-hour pay-per-view Sunday night event, who was really the driver pushing for that in addition to the Wednesday night pay-per-views that you guys have been doing?
So the pay-per-view companies, that model of the Wednesday, they had never done that before. An episodic live, they were used to a big boxing event that had no creative. I shouldn't say that, no creative, but no episodic television. Same with, let me back up. So the possible idea of us moving from Wednesday night pay-per-views to 3 pay-per-views on a Wednesday, and we were going to do a hybrid on the 4th, but coming up with quarterly pay-per-views, the in-demand, DirecTV, and Dish, all of them said different ways, but they were, hey, our marketing efforts are not in the episodic world. We are in big pay-per-views. We are in one-offs, like Mike Tyson is the goal, De La Hoya. We could go through all the big boxing greats, and UFC was coming on at the time, but nothing like they are today. But it was the big boxing one-offs. That's how they were good at marketing. And they would just, and I say a complete blitz marketing the last 10 days of a big fight. You saw it everywhere. That's how they were used to marketing. And they were like, why don't you guys try one of the Sunday pay-per-views, obviously raise it to $30 or $40, whatever it may be. And let's see how you do, because, you're doing between 10 and 20,000 every Wednesday. And sometimes you drop under that, sometimes above that. But so that's the running deal. So we know everybody doesn't buy every week. So let's just say you have a base of 20 or 30,000 that buy once a month or twice a month or whatever it may be. Let's try to get a high price tag. So there was a method to their madness. Panda Finance kind of looked at that. We looked at it, and that's how we were like, okay, if we're doing that, how can we, maybe there is a concept here where we do 3 live, and that 4th one, we don't pay all the production cost. And I'm talking about in a month, we take that one and make that if you will, we can come up with all original content, but we film it, but we don't have to pay the full rate of a production. So we were basically in the lab trying to look at all kinds of different options. We obviously never landed on this, but it was one of the concepts. But I'd say the in-demand was the original driver of, hey, can you guys do a one Sunday night pay-per-view?
Talk to me about Jonny Fairplay. He makes the Torch here, and there's a rumor that he signed a deal or is about to sign a long-term deal, that it won't just be a handful of guest appearances. And people are suggesting that perhaps he'll join on commentary or he'll be a manager, but people are not happy with it. Even though he's worked as Roddy Piper's full-time assistant, even though he's worked indie shows and promoted his own indie shows in several states, the belief is that he, quote unquote, hasn't paid his dues. And allegedly, he had some rowdy conduct at some bars in the past that some of the guys thought was maybe a little too, quote unquote, fanboy. This, according to the Torch. How does Jonny Fairplay come into your life? Do you remember people having some heartburn about working with Jonny? And what was the big time goal? I mean, obviously he's been on the hit show Survivor Series. Is this just he's a wrestling fan and if he can promote and get some eyeballs, let's do it? Or was there more to it than that?
So in your Google machine, I don't even know if we can come up with it. Survivor, though, in 2002, 3, 4, 5, the ratings
Were unbelievable.
okay. So I wasn't a Survivor watcher. Were you?
I was not, but I knew it was the highest rated show on television.
Like by far,
Yes.
they were crushing it. And one of those viewers who was a over the top Survivor watcher was Dixie.
Okay.
Just a huge Survivor fan. And during those times, those 12 to 10 to 8 or however many cast members they really were household names. They were on the cover of People magazine and doing the talk show rounds after they got eliminated. I mean, they were mainstream. Well, to say Jonny Fairplay was a heel on that show is an understatement. He was like lied about his grandmother. I don't remember all the storylines that they had in it, but he was a big time charismatic heel, and Dixie was a huge fan of it. And it just so happened Johnny liked wrestling. He wanted in. And so it was that whole talk. And when I kind of read the research about Johnny having a full-time contract, I go back to, I don't think that was really, maybe it was discussed between Dixie and Johnny. I wasn't a part of those conversations, but we were still running 1 day a week. And so, even an AJ Styles, the exclusivity we had him is you just had to give us priority on Wednesday. So I think that's a lot of dirt sheet writing, journalist, newsletter writing, however you want to say it, that just kind of pumped it up. But there was an interest there from not just Dixie, from creative. Hey, if we can create kind of a publicity, and we're going to get into a couple on this episode, a Chicago Bear dude, player, there's a couple. And so obviously the original idea with Hogan was, talk about a publicity stunt, getting Hogan to be a part of it. And we went into those negotiations on the prior episode, but no, Johnny was going to be a publicity stunt. His promo skills and his bumping skills were adequate, but they were, I think he'd tell you this day, they weren't nothing over the moon, but he was willing to play ball. And if we could get press out of him, I think we were all willing to play ball.
You would have guessed how many people watched, I know he was on Pearl Islands, so this isn't the same season, but do you want to guess how many people watched the season 1 finale of Survivor? Just guess, Jeff.
Okay. So
here in America, season 1.
So the football game the other day, which kind of blew my mind, was in the 20 million, 27, 28, the streaming one. But okay, this is broadcast television.
Broadcast television, August 2000.
Wow. So we're kind of in this golden era of cable television. 35 million?
51.69.
Think about that, Conrad.
The season that Johnny was on, Pearl Islands, the finale did 22.29, but throughout the season, 19.97 million people were watching the show. So Jesus. I say all that to say, if anybody listening to this was in the TNA locker room and upset that Jeff Jarrett had the audacity to have Jonny Fairplay on the show, you don't get it, kind sir.
But I'm telling you, there was a lot of rumblings, but I did my best not to pay attention to that because I'm like, they're not supposed to get it. They're supposed to get in the ring and run the play. So you can't ask them to think too far out the box. You just can't.
How do you and Vince Russo patch things up? It's written in the torch here in February that you guys are talking again. Talk to me about.
On this occasion, I don't remember any big reconciliation other than, hey, man, you knew it wasn't personal. And he might have said, well, I took it personal and it was personal, but let's go to work. I don't remember any big kiss and make up, hug. I don't remember any begrudgingly. I think it was, he's coming back to work. If I remember, yeah, he was still in Atlanta at the time. So, when he wasn't on board with us, he went back to his CD warehouse, or, we'll call it his day job. Again, in these early days, a full-time gig with TNA, there was just very few of us that were full-time.
Talk to me about Jimmy Hart. I know that he had been sitting in on some of the creative meetings once upon a time. Usually it would be yourself and Dutch Mantel, and you would have a Thursday morning booking meeting with guys like Jimmy Hart and Glenn Gilberti and Scott D'Amore, and sometimes Dixie and Jeremy Borash and Bill Banks would also sit in. But it's noted here that since everything broke down with Hulk Hogan, Jimmy Hart has not only not been on these Thursday booking meetings, he's not even been backstage at the shows. Were you holding it against Jimmy that Hogan had not come over, or was Jimmy just aware of what had happened with Hulk and thought, I should probably just lay low for a bit?
More so the what you said there. Jimmy Hart, his role evolved back and forth. I mean, he was a part of the original trips down to Orlando and the Impact Zone, but so we'll say into 2003, 2004, not just the Hogan potential coming on board, but we knew we were putting on critically acclaimed, but AJ was coming into his own, and others, and the cadence and the rhythm. And we had an Ultimate X match and a World Cup, and we were beginning to develop talent, but we knew our single biggest problem was awareness and marketing, and we knew we were limited on our budget to do a national marketing campaign and all that. But Jimmy, that picture you just flashed up, he just turned 80, and so that's 20 years ago. I think he looks just the same. I mean, it is amazing. He does not age. That is remarkable. But Jimmy is, man, when you really know, I hope Annie does a single biography on him. His life story is fascinating because people were like, hey, what's his background? And he was a rock and roll and had number ones, and then him being real life buddies of Jerry Lawler, and how he went from that to WWF and then WCW, and just the career. But Jimmy, at his very core, is one of the hardest workers there is. And Jimmy would get in his car and drive to Nashville, and he's like, no, I don't want to fly because I'm going to this book or that book. But one thing Jimmy has always had, and this is something that you probably, I'm sure you're aware of, Conrad, but you'll smile, is Jimmy's Rolodex. There wasn't.
He knows everybody.
And when I say everybody, there's not a market in the United States that Jimmy doesn't have a contact of multiple radio partners. And if you have wrestler A, B, and C call up and say, hey, man, can I get on morning drive? Well, we're booked or this or that. Jimmy, especially, in this 2004, maybe 20 years later, because radio's changed so much, but there wasn't a market Jimmy couldn't get on. And so Jimmy he was a one-man marketing machine in a lot of ways. And so he was on board and doing everything he possibly could. And look, we weren't paying him a lot, but we weren't paying him just to be around on Wednesdays. There was, hang around on Thursday and some marketing here. And I mean, Jimmy is, again, you kind of look at where Hulk was in the professional wrestling industry. He wasn't working for Vince at the time. WCW was gone. We were, there was independent wrestling, but not a lot. And we were the only consistent thing running. And Jimmy got on board and more than pulled his weight.
Let me ask you about something that's in the Observer. There are hints of a big announcement coming. Jeff Jarrett on the TV show teased it, talking to this Thomas T. Lawyer character, as they have a phone character wanting to talk about the big news, but he told him he couldn't. Thomas T. What can you tell us about this?
Thomas T. Stenenbaum. It was complete storyline. We had some fun, and we're going to see, I have to let this story develop. At this point, Conrad, I got to do more research. I don't even remember where we were going storyline, but some people might remember him as Reverend Ernest Ainsley, that was around in USWA days. Tom Sturdivant lives here locally. He is the driver to the stars, but great businessman. Old Bobby, old Kid Rock, I think he still drives him. His only driver, and a few others, but he's been around the wrestling business, and we were going to do a storyline. Some folks may remember him. He also did a cameo that was the preacher when so that would have been Karen and AJ got married later in the Impact Zone that we've covered on one of the episodes. But Tom T literally been a family friend of the Jarretts for years, but we were going with the storyline with him.
The Observer would say they're at least talking about spending money because they've been talking more with Kevin Nash about bringing he and Scott Hall in. And he reminds everybody that back when TNA first started, you guys were paying Scott Hall $7,500 a week, and you offered Sean Waltman $7,500 a week if he could get out of his WWE commitments. But by the time he did, he wound up working for $2,000 a week until he quit. But allegedly, Nash is wanting $7,000 a week to do the show. These are obviously big dollars, especially for a startup. But what do you remember about perhaps Dixie saying, "What if?" Did you think, or did she think Hall and Nash are the answer here in early 04?
And that's where, you know, as I look back, the quick synopsis of the early days of TNA, Hell South and Richard Scrushy, and, you know, did we have unlimited funds? No, but we had a line of credit. Richard understood very quick. You got to pay talent. You got to probably overpay them some to get on and get going. And that was the strategy. Well, that went south super quick. The Carters came on board, energy-based company, didn't completely really ever wrap their head around on the entertainment component of it. But with that being said, they came on shrewd, watched every budget they could. But now here we are a year and a half into the relationship. How do we grow this? And I'm like, marketing and talent. And well, what talent's out there? Well, Hall and Nash would probably be right at the top of the list. Well, okay. And I'm like, Kevin's going to be expensive, like real expensive. And Kevin gave us a number, honestly, based on where Scott had originally come in. Once we had a few conversations, then I think Kevin went, okay, that's not really our reality.
So Jeff, I'm curious because you said right there, you recognize that Richard recognized rather that you're probably going to have to overpay talent, at least at first, some, and you were very careful to qualify that. Like you felt like you needed, I guess if we were a bar or restaurant, we need some sort of a loss leader. I'm curious, did your dad agree with that? Because it feels like when he was running Memphis, that was not the way he did it. He was looking for a profit on every show. Or am I wrong on that?
No, I think diplomatically, you're wrong on that because he overpaid in his Austin Idol, but he wouldn't ever in his mind, I'm not overpaying him. I got to pay him above because he's going to get a return. He was very, very adamant on, I'm going to pay a guy what they draw, because if I get out of skewed, it doesn't do me or him any good. And that's why he paid Lawler very, very well. Why did Jerry stay around here and could have gone to any territory, could have gone to WCW or WWF way before he did? Well, because he owned part of the company and he was getting paid very well. Dundee got paid well. Guys that put butts in seats, he had no problem. But his opinion on putting butts in seats and most talent, I'm sure that there's a story or two about the Fabulous Ones leaving that my dad was like, I'm not going to pay them what they want. I'm going to pay them what I think they're worth. And I'm not saying that the Rock and Roll or, way back when you really hear the story of Watts being down and out of this territory alone, the Tennessee territory, because my dad understood I've got fantastic talent. There's no way I can pay them all. what they're worth. And one fell swoop, the Rock and Roll, Terry Taylor, Bill Dundee, Jim Cornette. What he'll would that have been Dennis and Bobby?
Yeah.
I mean, there was like 8 or 10 really, really talented guys that left Tennessee, and Tennessee kept right on going. That's where when you really kind of look at it, I know it's a different era and it's a completely different time frame, but he knew he had 90 minutes of television. And
what I'm saying here, Jeff, is you're not really in a spot where you can get a return, like I know.
Go ahead.
Like as far as drawing and selling tickets, if you were trying to put together a card for TNA in 04 here, where you're going to pay guys based on what they're drawing, and your metric is ticket sales, not pay-per-view.
Oh,
I mean, that's a totally different animal, right?
Yeah. And what we knew ticket sales were, I mean, we wanted a full house that, we had our ringside that was sold out every week, but that's 300, 400, and maybe another, I don't know, 100, so maybe 500 or 600 paid and 500 or 600 that we let in 20 minutes before showtime or 30 minutes before showtime. But we were looking at pay-per-view buys. So to try to generate pay-per-view buys.
The January 7th show draws nearly a full house. There's about 1,200 folks here in the asylum. Everyone is thrilled because it's freezing outside. They're just glad to be inside. Meltzer would say, based on pre-show lines, it looked to be 2/3 paper. And of course, the WWE was running the Municipal Auditorium for a SmackDown house show just 2 days earlier. The main event of this show is the Ultimate X, which is a strong match, although not as strong as the first one, according to Wade. Chris Sabin regains the title over Michael Shane, Low Key, and Christopher Daniels. Spent a lot of time talking about Low Key and Christopher Daniels. Good amount of time on Sabin. Not really spent a lot of time talking about Michael Shane. Are you surprised he got out of the business?
You know what? Some guys, we had this conversation a week or so ago. It just wasn't, not saying he didn't love the business. It just wasn't right for him, and wanted to make a living somewhere or somehow a different way. Fantastic talent. I mean, really good talent. He just obviously wasn't in it for the long haul.
This Ultimate X, which we've discussed before in the gimmick matches episode, this time we have the opposite problem we had the first time. During the first Ultimate X match, damn it, the X kept falling down and nobody was touching it. The second time, by the time Sabin gets up there, because it is higher than the first time,
considerably,
when he grabs it, the belt won't come down. So we have the opposite problem. This has to be a source of frustration for you, but these are growing pains, right? Like in a company like WWE, they'd have multiple people troubleshooting this before the doors opened. Maybe that's not the case here in TNA yet.
I would I would chuckle because I can remember, me, Dutch, or whoever would say, "Oh my God, just don't let the damn thing fall down." Well, right. if you say that and then it's repeated and then repeated again, by the time it gets to the guy, or the pressure, or not that we like this with their huge organization, whoever was in charge of hanging it probably felt the pressure of the weight of the world, because all day long he probably heard, remember what happened last time, and something to the effect, if that belt falls, you're fired. So they went from leaning left to leaning right, all whatever, or vice versa. I mean, that thing was super glued up there, but it didn't fall, that's for damn sure. And the poles, that's why the early startup days, these first 2 years, my God, we had a lot of fun, but the poles were a little bit too. It took the match quality down, because the poles were, you couldn't do the exact same spots you could with the poles being a little bit lower. So the X above the ring was quite high.
Speaking of quite high, somebody had to be high, because we have Eric Watts in a main event program here in 2004. He has decided to resign as the director of authority, or he was supposed to, but he's refused because he says the NWA board of directors is dirty and he's trying to clean it up. So we're setting up a match for 1 week later, which will be Watts teaming with AJ Styles to take on yourself and Abyss. And the stakes are, if Styles and Watts win, then AJ gets a title shot against you for the NWA strap. But if they lose, Watts is fired. And you're actually going throughout the show via Kid Cash, trying to get people to sign a sheet of paper showing loyalty to him, to you, of course. Meanwhile, not a lot of loyalty in the Observer. He's pretty critical, saying that it's only a 2-hour show and you spent 26 minutes of the pay-per-view just talking before we actually got to a match, before the first match started. The lack of wrestling, only 35 minutes total in a 2-hour pay-per-view, was noted by many, and not in a good way. And I know that Eric Bischoff has been pretty loud and proud in saying that story matters a lot more than matches. And you have supported that statement here on the program. But I do feel like when you're asking people to pay money to watch the show, you have to rethink your thinking a little bit, or do you not? Like, I know you need an emotional investment, but there is an expectation that if folks are paying X number of dollars to watch a show on pay-per-view, they do expect matches. You're really walking a tightrope here about how much wrestling and how much story, no?
It's always subjective. It's always walking a tightrope. It's always damned if you do and damned if you don't, because I'll just kind of walk you through a conversation. Dixie would say, Jeff, we only had, can you believe what they wrote online? We only had 28 minutes of wrestling out of 2 hours. We just can't do that anymore. Walk right out of that, walk into my dad. Hey, Dad, this is what happened. We did this segment and it went 4 minutes long, and this segment went 4 minutes long. I made the decision to put, maybe put all the time in the main event. So the main event had this and this, but we still ended only in a minute. And he goes, Jeff, this is just an example. Do you know how many Mike Tyson pay-per-views I bought? And the entire fight lasted maybe 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Do you think I was mad? I'm just like, so there's so many different arguments. I mean, I will say this. Execution's everything.
Yeah.
But on a 2-hour pay-per-view, I am well aware that people are spending, in those days, $9.99. But it's the expectation that you're going to have, 5 or 6 matches. And again, it's up for debate and up for argument. But show after show after show, not just in Memphis, anywhere in the country, they always pay to see the main event. That is what the emotional investment is when you plop down your, nowadays, whatever it may be, you better, like the main event better deliver. That's why the pressure's on. And I kind of look at not just AEW, but WWE and any independent show. And when I'm asked from different guys, I just got to ask via email from a promoter in the UK, hey, can you give me a little guidance on what you think makes a good show? And I'm just like, well, let's chat about that. We had a conversation, and I just said, if you don't deliver in your main event, you got to start there, because that's what they pay to see. And I believe in that today. Even in the era of 1 hour and 2 hour and 3 hour shows, you got to deliver in your main event.
I hope in the future when somebody asks you, what makes a good show, you just hit them with the old Bree-woo. I think Bree-woos and guitars make good shows.
It does.
And if they're not sure what that means, they should book you and find out the hard way.
There you go.
Yeah.
Hey, no, go ahead.
Jim Mitchell is going to come back here on the program, and he's going to return under hood. It's Raven and a mystery partner who's going to be revealed to be Sandman are wrestling Julio De Niro and CM Punk. The masked guy did ether on a towel gimmick to put out Raven. He unmasks and reveals himself. It's Mitchell. And the crowd is dead for the match, which is sad because the angle actually took its time. There was a buzz when it was revealed to be Mitchell. So listen, it's a cool deal here. Raven and a mystery partner, Sandman, taking on Julio De Niro and CM Punk. Like, think about that. That's sort of original ECW, and I think most people remember when WWE brought back ECW. CM Punk was the guy there. Kind of a little old school ECW and what would become ECW. Why did you bring Jim Mitchell back? Is he easy to do business with?
I think he's a fantastic talker. And there's when you look back, why would I bring Jim Mitchell back, or why would we bring Jim Mitchell back? He's a storyteller. At his very core, Jim can talk and tell stories, and not that Punk couldn't talk, but these are in his early days. But his thread, and I say Jim Mitchell's, the new church, he had history, and so it worked in this scenario with Raven as his opponent.
And I'm sure you at least discussed him snorting cocaine on one of your pay-per-views, right?
Any fallout from that? Any online chatter fallout from that? Oh boy.
Okay. You didn't see?
Maybe I didn't.
Okay. Well, it's worth a Google. Insane Clown Posse was scheduled to start on this January 7th show, and they put word out themselves. Insane Clown Posse was so excited they were already promoting. And there's about 24 fans who show up to the show dressed up like the Insane Clown Posse. They got the full clown paint on. They're even chanting ICP during the explosion taping. So they're ringside and noticeable on camera, but ICP is not actually here. How did the deal fall apart? What the hell?
You know what? I think, and look, those in the ICP, man, what incredible marketers to the fan base. And so I don't remember specifically if they put something on their website that they were coming, or maybe they put it on their website and basically saying, we're headed to TNA with no specific date. Well, the Juggalos locally in Middle Tennessee, they're going to be there and vocal and loud and proud and get after it. And that's one of the things I loved. They've got a loyal fan base.
I know that once upon a time they weren't always beloved, though. I mean, from what I've heard some people would argue that they did not want the Insane Clown Posse to be there. And I've heard other people say, well, we could have people in clown paint who are live trying to hijack the show, or we could have no one there. Is that the way you remember that conversation going?
Look, there was some ice storms like we just had here, and maybe a May show when kids are getting anyway. But the Asylum always had a good crowd, and I didn't ever see ICP, they're going to hijack the show, any of that. Look, they're going to be engaged. B, I felt that we had a very good relationship with the guys, that they could go out and say, hey guys, we're trying to have a show here. Let's not hijack it. It's not like Joe couldn't go out and tell his fans or his crew or his guys or people in there, hey man, back off. It was a more controlled, chaotic nature than most people probably realized.
So you're down. You got 2 scoops of the whoop.
Whoop. Always those guys. The Gathering is a lifetime memory for me. A few of them.
I've heard from the Torch that Dutch Mantel has been telling other people in the creative circle here that he thinks the average TNA viewer is between 40 and 50 years old and doesn't want to be confused by wrestling storylines. So the theme is keep it simple. That sound like a Dutchism? Keep it simple.
Oh, and he would always say, hey guys, don't overthink this. Dutch had a mindset, but the heck, Dutch saying that there was a 40 or that is so foreign. Now, here is what I truly believe the situation was. Dutch would ask specific marketing questions because he, like myself and like you, Conrad, love data. Like, hey, Dixie, can we find out who our viewer is on Wednesday nights? Like, let's find out, where are they from? Are they from, what part of the country or what city, and how old are they, and what's their economic status, and how many in their household? Just marketing data. Dutch always would go after that information. I mean, when he was running Puerto Rico, he was all over the ratings. And I used to say, Dutch, how are you getting this? Heck, I know the TV folks. I know this, I know that. I'm like, well, good for you. I mean, Dutch is he's sharp as far as really trying to get analytical about the product.
Dutch is going to get a little bit of shrapnel in the Torch and the Observer. Quote, writer agent Dutch Mantell is becoming less popular with the majority of wrestlers by the week. The big complaint about Mantell is that he's quote unquote stuck in the 70s and blows off those who question some of his booking decisions by telling them it's just wrestling. Not only that, but it comes out that TNA officials told Jerry Lynn they don't plan on booking him in the future. And the word in the locker room is that Dutch Mantell has made it very clear in creative meetings he doesn't see anything in Jerry Lynn. Wow, a lot to unpack here. Do you remember Dutch rubbing some people the wrong way?
That is.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Dutch rubbing the people the wrong way?
Yeah.
Many. I mean, Dutch can rub folks the wrong way, but do you think he cares at times? Hell no. But him not being a fan of Jerry Lynn, just drilling that down makes zero sense.
I was going to say.
It doesn't ring true. Now, here's how that can kind of be manipulated. Hey, you know what? We've got 30 guys on the roster, and Panda's only going to pay for 20. We need to have turnover talent. We probably ought to give some talent a heads up that they're getting a rest, because that's the worst thing, is to bring guys with the expectation you're going to get booked, or you're going to come and you're going to work, or whatever it may be, and then nothing happens. Then that kind of creates the discourse and the resentment and all that, because you think you're getting paid, then you're not getting paid and all that. I'm sure that was the case with Jerry and many others, and Dutch would be one of the ones to say, hey, we're going to be honest. You're not going to like what I say right now, but not everybody's going to get a slot every Wednesday night. There's going to be some folks that just aren't going to get booked. And then you have Dutch doesn't like Jerry, which is total BS.
Let's talk a little bit about one of the other cutbacks you're going to be doing here. You're going to start doing a taped episode. So you've normally been live every single week. You're going to go to 3 live Nashville shows a month, and then 1 taped show where you take matches that have been taped like the 2 weeks prior and you air them there. The idea being here, as it's reported in the Torch, is that you're going to record some matches on January 28th and February 4th, and they'll actually air the following Wednesday on February 11th. But this is going to reduce some of your production costs, because you don't have to have the crew, and you don't have to have the ring and the lighting and the satellites, et cetera, but also your travel costs, because you save a week for bringing everybody in. So there are still some post-production costs, but boy, you want to talk about a deep cut. Going from 4 weeks to 3 weeks, that's a big damn savings for the company, is it not?
So the mindset, and look, we never pulled the trigger on this, but the mindset was, let's just use 100,000 a week. If we went from 400 a month to 300, but we create content on all 3 consecutive weeks, because our show was Central Time, 7 to 9. So we would be done in Nashville at 9 o'clock and have a red hot crowd, and we could easily get 1 or 2 matches. We had to do a World Cup and a couple of different things during the fair when we were out of the arena, that we had to do tape shows. I want to say we had to do that in September of 2003 or at some point. And we got the numbers back and say, hey, the pay-per-view buys on a tape show were not, it was doable. It wasn't dramatically down or whatever it was. And we kind of looked at, okay, if we go to that model and do 3 live and 1 tape and get really, plan about, execute a real creative plan where there are backstage stuff that we do shoot stuff that the audience hadn't seen, that we go off site and do doc style stuff and interviews and all that. But you come up with original content, the whole 2 hours is original, but some stuff that is not been seen to any live crowd. And you do that fourth, so that you went from 400 to 300,000 production costs. So you've got that other 100,000. We can apply some of that to marketing, or we're going to say, okay, if we're going to do quarterly pay-per-views, you do that 12 times over a quarter. That's $1.2 million that you can market, that you can put into the mindset of doing these quarterly pay-per-views. That was a mindset or a business plan. Like I said, we never pulled the trigger on it, but it is definitely what we were headed in the direction of.
Let's talk about Jonny Fairplay. His deal doesn't get finalized until 7:30 p.m. the night of the show. So a half hour before the show's supposed to start. That explains why he wasn't advertised. Bob Ryder was the point man on the deal, and he had to negotiate with Jonny Fairplay's agent. It's noted in the Observer here that Jonny Fairplay's agent is famous for being the agent for the adult film star Ron Jeremy.
Yep.
Yeah. Ron Jeremy's agent. Do you know what Ron Jeremy could do? It's a lot like what Lanny Poffo could do. Have you heard about this?
Connie, I have not heard of Ron's escapades.
I think that's how he got famous, maybe originally. He had a unique party trick.
Okay.
You're familiar with that?
Well,
you know what Poffo could do, right? You heard about that.
Oh yeah, Lanny.
Well, Ron Jeremy was doing that before Poffo made it mainstream.
Who stole whose gimmick? Like whose gimmick infringement? I'm going to say Ron imposed on Lanny.
Lanny? Wow.
Lanny's the OG.
Have to have a Frisbee fight and see who wins. So Fairplay keeps adding new points in, or his agent does, literally until the last minute. And I guess this is because the word had gotten out somehow through Fairplay's people. They had heard that Dixie said something like, give them what they want. Let's make this deal happen. Now, as the story goes, Fairplay his side had pretty much said, I can get you discussed on Howard Stern. Howard Stern, and as a reminder, this is pre-Sirius XM. That's a couple years away at this point. Howard Stern has the biggest radio audience in America. It isn't close.
By far, yes.
And if you can have your program discussed there, because maybe he's going to be a guest there and he'll promote or he'll talk about it, that's the sort of coverage that TNA literally could just not buy. So Meltzer would say, if that's possible, then maybe that's worth it. But if it is a huge financial risk, maybe it's not. And he would say it's telling that WWE showed little or no interest in Fairplay, given that he was fresh off of this highly rated show. 22 million people were watching that program. He has indie experience managing wrestlers out in Oregon. And I guess his claim to fame at that point was Roddy Piper wrote in his book, without naming him by name, that he thought his driver was trying to kill him when they were in a wreck that hurt him badly. But this Fairplay stuff doesn't go away, because I guess, the more this festers in the locker room, the madder the talent start to get. The idea being they're hearing that Jonny Fairplay is getting a guaranteed deal, and they're talking to Hulk Hogan, and they're talking to Sting and Roddy Piper and Lex Luger, and it's in the Observer, they're talking to Kevin Nash. But when I ask for an extra $50 a week, I'm told we can't afford it. Buddy, I could see how you had some upset folks here. What do you remember about Fairplay's agent, him coming in, the lack of reaction from the live crowd on the debut, and the heartburn in the backstage area?
Heartburn in my gut. Conrad, think about the balls I'm trying to juggle, because first and foremost, and I said the pity party, but it's the reality, and I can certainly chuckle about it today. But the ball's trying to juggle, first and foremost, the investor's daughter. Dixie wanted Fairplay on board. Okay.
Yes.
Then by design, Bob Ryder at onewrestling.com, notes from Bob, is running point on, I guess you could say, negotiations, because he was doing most of the talent deals. So him and Dixie, because I wasn't a part of this negotiation, Dixie wanted a deal and Dixie and Bob were getting it done. Well, having hindsight, now knowing after working with Bob all those years, God rest his soul, I'm sure that he had his pipeline to the newsletters and stirring things up. And then Johnny probably in the flames as much as he possibly could. Hey, get what I can get, or get the, he's going to blow up whatever his salary was or payoff was. And then you have the talent who probably were, rightly so, hey man, I'm just asking for 25 more a week or 50 more a week. Nope, can't pay you that. If we pay you, we're going to end up paying everybody. We don't have that in the budget. And then trying to write a show.
It's tough.
It was so much. We talk about a whole lot of chatter. There was so much nonsense chatter when I look back on off and on through the years. Oh my God. Nonsense chatter. Because I understood Johnny coming on board, but is he really going to move the needle? Probably not. Can he get us some exposure? Yes.
Just amazing conversations. The show on the 14th has 950 people that are there. It's guessed in the newsletter that's about 60% paper. And the big angle is Watt's job versus Styles getting a title match. Styles is going to work most of the way in the tag match here. And Meltzer would say when he was in, it was very good. But when Eric Watts was in, it was not. First, Jarrett would hit Watts with a belt shot for the pin. Mike Tenay goes nuts, saying this was too high a stakes for something like this to happen. He tells Rudy Charles what happened. Bill Behrens comes out, corroborates Charles' story, orders a restart. And then in the restart, the masked El Leon, which is Apollo from Puerto Rico, brawls with you, basically leaving Abyss in a handicap match against both guys. Goldilocks is going to come out, and she's going to hit Abyss with a low blow, and that leads to Styles pinning him after a springboard sunset flip. Don Callis is going nuts, saying that can't stand, and if the board doesn't overturn the decision, he's quitting. Watts then said if Styles doesn't get his title shot, he's quitting. And Jarrett said that since Callis was the one who made the Fairplay deal, he's too valuable to the company. Tune in next week to find out the board's ruling. And the idea here is to build up to a Callis versus Watts, with the loser losing all power on January 28th. And Meltzer would say live, this angle had the most heat in the building in a long time. Fans were throwing things in the ring, which, while not safe, the promotion took as proof the angle stirred emotions and worked. Callis even got hit with a water bottle. Abyss was hit with something. Mantell and Tony Falk came out, and it appeared Abyss was so mad he was about to lose it, but wound up calming down. What do you remember about this match? You guys had them pretty hot here.
You've never been around Abyss when he gets really mad, have you?
No.
Yeah. It's a sight to hold. It is something else. But to kind of go back, Eric Watts, and we've talked about it in previous episodes, charismatic, can talk his ass off. I mean, very connected to all kinds of celebrities and athletes and all that. But as far as the storyline in this, when you team with AJ Styles on the babyface side, you're not going to outshine your partner. It's just that simple. On the other side was Don Callis. Don is still doing today what he did back then. Don was working with us. He had decided, I think at this time, he was going home. And so we were kind of doing an exit strategy here. If I remember correctly, as the storyline goes, it may not be this particular match in next week, but I know at some point he was heading out, but he could get heat. He can still get heat. But the people in Nashville, we had laid this out, and look, Mike Tenay, again, by this time we had been in this building every Wednesday night for year and a half. And to say that, our regulars and the people coming, they knew the characters inside and out. Mike Tenay was a big baby face. We would get him involved from time to time, but just everything you laid out there, we had 4 or 5 different personalities, and everybody executed. And it's the art of professional wrestling. People got hot, he got emotionally involved, threw a bottle, hit Abyss, and he about blew his top.
The semifinal is supposed to be a match where there's 2 canes on 2 ring posts. It's Raven and Sandman versus Julio De Niro and CM Punk, managed by James Mitchell. But Raven no-showed, which Meltzer would say I'd heard was the booking plan, as they were trying to sell the idea that Mitchell returning has sent him into a depression, although I believe maybe there was a family illness as well. So Sandman wrestled a handicap match against both and lost, setting up Sandman and Balls Mahoney versus The Gathering. I really think for a pay-per-view that this is unfair to advertise to the public a wrestler, particularly since Raven is one of the company's biggest draws, if that word even applies these days. And he's not going to be there. They could have just never advertised the match and added the match once the show started, which they do all the time. So nobody paid $10 and then was told, hey, Raven's not going to be here. What do you say to that critique, that perhaps there was a better way to do it if you knew he wasn't going to be there?
If I recall, I could be completely disputed, I think he legit had an issue going on at home.
Okay.
And yeah, I do. And I think we had to figure out the best way to send the message. And look, substitutions, heck, we talked about it on the WCCW Von Erich, it's the single thing that my dad believes, and I mean, others believe, it's what killed the territory and will kill any town, is no shows. You advertise talent and they don't show. You do that enough times, people, what do you call it? Consumer confidence, right, Conrad?
That's right.
When you lose that consumer confidence. So I am always very conscientious of that. As in today's environment, you put tickets on sale and you have, we'll call it a graphic, and there's 10, let's just say 10 names, 10 bodies, 10 faces up there. Just kind of by design in the world we live in, 1, 2, 3, 4 probably are not going to be written in that week. So is that false advertising? It is. The world has changed. We talked about it on a couple episodes. You had the Hogan, and you had Rock and Cena and all this, the face of the company. Now the brand is what sells. And I think that's a part of this whole discussion, is that, the brand's what sells tickets. And if you lose consumer confidence in the brand, that's, we've talked about it on the TNA, the bad years that moved to Impact, that I think that's what Scott and those guys are doing over there right now, trying to build consumer confidence in the brand. So us, not advertising Raven and knowing that he wasn't going to be there, that doesn't ring true. I do believe Raven had an issue going on that he couldn't be there, and we had to make the best of it.
Let's talk a little bit about Jonny Fairplay again. There's a report in the Observer, quote, backstage observers say Dixie Carter was either laying it on thick or she was totally marking out for Jonny Fairplay. The general feeling of most wrestlers was that it was a mistake to have Fairplay take a powerbomb from AJ Styles on his first night in. These wrestlers feel it would have made more sense to build up to Fairplay's first bump, so that it would have meant more. When asked about taking the bump, Fairplay told wrestlers that he and TNA officials felt it was important for the media to get photo opportunities of him taking the bump. I know that sounds a little silly, but if you're trying to use him for exposure, you probably do need a little physicality on that first visit. I understand why people wearing their wrestler hat would say, yeah, but you should build up to that. And I get that. But if you're looking for that sports center moment, that's not going to happen if he's just walking to the ring. You got to have him do something, right?
Bingo. And look, Fairplay wasn't going to get Sports Center. He was going to get National Enquirer or Stern.
Yeah.
I know you knew that, but any kind of clip, him doing offense is not what the Survivor fan base wanted to see. The Survivor fan base, because he had, again, really been a fantastic heel on the show. They wanted to see him get his ass kicked. And so how do we, as a brand, TNA, show him getting his butt handed to him? Have him take a big bump and make sure we capture it every way possible and then service the trades that way.
During the pre-show meeting here, Jeff Jarrett would tell the wrestlers to refrain from using cheap heat tactics like flipping off the fans or spitting at them. The ICP fanatics, known as juggalos, are being blamed for vandalism that took place in the parking lot following the TNA show last week. The police were called to the scene, and sources are unsure if any arrests were made. During the show, there was at least one fight involving a juggalo and one of the regular TNA fans. What do you remember about vandalism in the parking lot? Does that ring a bell?
No. I don't remember if this is this situation, but Dutch was also a juggalo fan. The fan base, the livelihood, the engagement, and the energy. But on certain situations like this, he goes, they're going to be the damn scapegoats on anything. Hey, something happened, fighting the crowd. Oh, it's a juggalo. Hey, he said it could be a nun up there raising hell and getting in a fight. They're going to get the blame. And the parking lot vandalism, oh, it has to be a juggalo, regardless of proof or not. So, to my knowledge, a juggalo did not vandalize in the parking lot. And also, you kind of have to know the area of Nashville that the fairgrounds is in. And I don't think vandalism was rampant, but it certainly would happen from time to time. This just probably made a good newsletter tidbit to enhance the aura of the juggalos.
And I know what you're thinking to yourself as a well-adjusted adult listening to this podcast. You're saying to yourself, Self, what is a juggalo? Well, thankfully, we got an answer to that question 27 years ago on an album called The Great Malenko. No, not Dean's Dad. The album from 1997. The first two verses of the song, What is a Juggalo? Explain.
Oh, boy. Here we go.
What is a juggalo? Let me think for a second. Oh, he gets butt naked, and then he walks through the streets, winking at the freaks, with a 2-liter stuck in his butt cheeks. What is a juggalo? He just don't care. He might try to put a weave in his nut hair, because he could give a fuck less what a bitch thinks, and tell her that her butt stinks, and all that.
Now, is that 2-liter? Would that be Fago?
You know it is.
Whoop, whoop.
Jeff, of all the things you've considered over the years, you've altered your look a few times. Has it ever crossed your mind, maybe I should put a weave in my nut hair? Now that I've given you that information, is that something you'll think about before you teach Cody pull them tight?
I think I'm going to
pass on all this.
Yeah. I used my lawnmower, Connie.
I would have loved to see you back in the day with a lawnmower. Yeah. James Storm and Chris Harris are said to be showing obvious displeasure. I swear this is written in the Observer. Or boo-boo facing.
No.
Yet again, after they were informed they'd be losing to red shirt security. By the way, I've heard people use the word boo-boo facing, but boo-boo facing being written in black and white just tickles me.
Yeah, I did not know that Dave, as a wordsmith that he is, all 30,000, 65, 85,000 words per issue, that he would type out boo-boo.
The January 21st show was a unique atmosphere in the asylum, according to the Observer. It's been dead for too long, but it was wild with an old ECW arena-like atmosphere, largely because of the Insane Clown Posse. After putting on their website they would be partying before the show, a ton of new fans, some painted up, attended. The building was nearly sold out with 1,200 and early lines indicated, about 70% paper. The atmosphere was better than the dead crowd, and in many of the matches, the crowd just chanted ICP and paid only a little attention to the matches themselves. ICP themselves came into the crowd and sat in the stands late in the show and spit pop on Jarrett as he was brawling with El Leon in the crowd. Not everyone was thrilled with the Juggalo fans because there were fights in the crowd during the show. Man, I don't know why, but I just love that whoever is feeding this information to the Observer and the Torch, they are very clearly not ICP fans. Fair to say?
Fair, for sure. And clueless on the vibe that they help create in the arena. And look, is the Asylum Madison Square Garden? No, but you know, for as we had it dressed and produced out, you know, one whole side of it was the hard camera side with no chairs. We just had some ringside and dressing rooms, and you couldn't go up top because we had all kinds of things. So we're really talking about, you know, and the stage was on side of it. So when you put 1,200, 1,500 on, well, kind of, you know, 2.5 sides, Conrad, that place, I mean, so damn loud. And I mean, without the Juggalos, it could get really, really loud and rowdy, and the vibe. And like we talked about, Don West getting stuff thrown at him on there. Just pour in some Faygo on this recipe. It's one of those shows that you go, oh, wow, this is fun.
Well, what else is fun is our brand new affiliate partnership with Fanatics. We are so excited to talk about this with you guys, especially now that we're knee deep in the NFL playoffs. And of course, basketball's here. Everybody knows Double J as a basketball junkie. Well, here's an easy way to support your favorite podcast. You shop for your favorite players and teams by using our special URL. That's shopsportsmerch.com. If you haven't already, go check out shopsportsmerch.com. Or if you're watching along with us on YouTube, just hit that QR code that's up on the screen now, or check out the description below for the link in this very episode. We'll also have the link on all of our socials, but now you can shop for confidence for your favorite jerseys or caps or shirts or jackets or hoodies and more. Just be sure to use our special link, shopsportsmerch.com. To be clear, it connects you with Fanatics. There's no extra pricing. We're not charging you more than you would make if you would pay if you went right to Fanatics. But when you buy through us at shopsportsmerch.com, you still get the same great price, same great service from Fanatics, but it helps the show and it doesn't cost you anything. So if you're thinking about picking up a hat or a jersey or a gift for someone, or you just need some swag for your home team, support our home team and check out shopsportsmerch.com. So let's talk about the emphasis on Mike Tenay and yourself. There's a bit of a feud here brewing on the program. And the Observer would say this: those who are friends with Russo said he appeared to be a lot more calm than ever before. His attitude is that he'll suggest ideas, but it's up to Jarrett and Mantell if they don't like them. And he isn't going to worry about it much, which is different than the way Russo has been being. He was telling people he's born again. He's given up swearing, and he does appear on television. He wouldn't use bad language. In Jarrett's match with El Leon, a street fight with no winner, Tenay once shoved Jarrett, later was shoved back. He grabbed Jarrett's guitar and even jumped on the apron, trying to revive the ref after a ref bump spot, and ended with Jarrett threatening to fire Tenay, and Tenay hitting a line that it would be a cold day in hell when Jarrett could get him fired, which seems to be the direction they're going. So Russo's back saying he's turned over a new leaf. How have you patched things up? And then how did you enjoy working with Mike Tenay as more than just a commentator? Man, he's a part of the story now.
You know, we referenced it earlier. Russo in the, I don't want to say, I mean, he just came back to work. I don't think there was any, you know, other times throughout the entire history of TNA, boy, we had some ups and downs and all kinds of fun stuff. On this one, I think it was just early enough. We were still 1 day a week, and you know, prior Spike deal, and wasn't a lot of money. And I get it. I said it. His feelings were probably hurt, but I think by this time he had moved on, and you know, he came back, and we were trying to put out the best show we possibly could every Wednesday night. Mike, and I just touched on it earlier. At this point, the people in the asylum, he was their guy, man. They loved him. He was so ingrained in the DNA of TNA in so many ways. And I for me, I had watched through the years and heard stories and observed, and it's nothing new, but Lawler probably defined his character more through the years in the early days of Memphis, because that's what made him the legendary babyface. Is when it was time for him to switch babyface, he had been the kick-ass heel for years and years and years, and he defined his character more or equally knocking Lance Russell as opposed to whoever his babyface opponents were, whether it's my dad or Rocky Johnson or whoever it may be through the years. Lawler got over as a heel, and he collaborated with and used Lance in so many ways. I kind of was taking a page out of that, in that, me and Mike were never going to have a match. But if I can be an asshole, a prick, a no good SOB to Tenay, the people are connected to Mike emotionally because he's their guy. That's just going to kind of help the overall program, and specifically my character as a heel. That's just the direction I was going. And Mike could get a look on his face that if looks could kill, he'd have been shoot you right between the eyes. And the people felt that. They felt that in the asylum.
You're going to hold a meeting with the wrestlers before the show, telling them about the switch. You're going to be cutting back to 3 live events per month and 1 tape show. Meltzer would write, "It's weird with them clearly spending money and negotiating with people like Nash and Hogan that they're doing 1 tape show per month to save money. They were told they've gotten a TV deal in Korea. BG James asked if they're going to start running house shows, and Jarrett said no. It's a fair question. Had you guys considered running house shows, and why did you decide against it?"
We weren't ready and didn't have the infrastructure. B, when you looked at the other independent shows out there, and even WWE's house show business with their 4+ hours of television a week, the awareness, we just knew that we weren't anywhere close to being ready for that. Again, for you weekly My World listeners, giving the overarching, I think you guys now are can kind of see just how far the business has gone, because in 2004 there was no social media.
Right.
TNAwrestling.com was very successful, but I don't even think we had launched our YouTube. It was so early. So awareness for us was scratching and clawing and doing everything we could. And Brian, as a lifer in the business, he wanted paydays. It's funny that how he's the one who asked that question, and you think, yep, there's a vet. He wants more paydays. Are we going to have more? If not, I got to find some.
Let's talk a little bit about something you did on January 25th. I can't believe this is real, but it was 20 years ago. 20 years ago this week, you wrestled and defended your NWA Heavyweight Championship against Dory Funk.
Oh, wow.
Just 2 weeks before his 62nd birthday. By the way, if you're watching over on YouTube, can you believe that's Dory Funk we're looking at right there? But can you believe that fella right there is 62 years old? Said differently, he's 2 years younger than Sting. That face paint gimmick, that shit's working for Sting, is it not?
Oh, this match with Dory, I loved it. I think we went a while. And I've referenced this a couple of times. Dory Funk was my father's favorite world champion, second longest reigning champion. Dory was, in my dad's opinion, a pro's pro. He could really come in, and whoever he was working, whatever talent that he was working against in the territory, we talked about it at the top, Dory would go over, but his talent would be better off than when he stepped in the ring with Dory. And just a fantastic worker. So for me to go down to Florida and work and have this opportunity, and he had his school and his trainees, and they did a storyline out of it and everything. But yeah, Dory. And then, as we got to Orlando, Dory and his crew were great to us and showed up, and they helped out being extras and enhancement and all kinds of things. But yeah, oh gosh, that's 20 years ago, huh? Wow.
It's pretty crazy to think about how many former NWA champions you got to wrestle, because we know Ric Flair's on the list, and I mean Dory Funk's on the list, and there's so many others. But
yeah,
Dory Funk at the time, I mean, I guess this is still true, the second longest reigning champion in NWA history. He was champ from 69 to 73. So
years. Yeah,
that's unbelievable. And you have the opportunity to wrestle him here. Of course, you get the win after Dory's protege, Adam Windsor, turned on him. Adam Windsor was like the apple of Dory's eye. Anytime you logged into social media in this era, they were hammering Adam Windsor. And then, we never really saw Adam Windsor on the big stage. Why don't you think we saw more of Adam Windsor in professional
timing? I think it's that. I mean, again, we're going to go back to 2004. We were one day a week. I don't know if Adam was ready for the TNA roster. There was no other place to go. I wonder if Adam went back home to the UK. I think he's from UK. But again, timing. This era of the industry, the independents weren't hot. It just, again, a truly a different era. Did you hear Will Ospreay? And I'm saying that well, let me finish my thought. That independents weren't hot. We weren't going to run house shows. South Korea, we had an opportunity there. We were already on in India. So little by little, our international markets began to build. We had our first UK deal going. But did you hear Ospreay say, quote unquote, he was a TNA kid?
No. How cool is that?
He referred to himself. I guess that's maybe one of the reasons that he wanted to do it. He was a TNA kid. And, Grado was a TNA kid. There was others, but people, it's cool to hear the UK.
Oh yeah, he tweeted it. I see it now. He tweeted it on January 14th. Thank you for everything at Impact Wrestling. I was a TNA kid. That's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, just the again, Windsor being from UK, he was over here, but my point just being hammered to the death. Just a different era professional wrestling was in. It was coming off the golden age, coming off the attitude era of cable television. But big picture, Vince bought his competition. And that was that.
Well, speaking of that was that, you teased him earlier, Chicago Bear Dude. And by Chicago Bear Dude, we mean one of the most legendary and important Chicago Bears of all time, Hall of Famer Brian Urlacher, is friends with Eric Watts, and he's going to be ringside for Watts and Callis in the Loser Loses Power match. And at press time, Dave would say the only mainstream we've heard regarding Urlacher was on the local Fox station early morning newscast, with a very brief mention by the sports reporter, which said he would be wrestling on an NWA. What's that? With Jeff Jarrett. Who's that? And Don Callis. Who's that? Boy, I don't know why, but it's like the newsletters really enjoyed dunking whenever they could on TNA. But Brian Urlacher, man, is a big get in 04, in 14, in 24. How was Brian to deal with here at the event?
Great. And, Urlacher, going to make some Dip Buckus fans, probably the greatest linebacker in the history of the Chicago Bears.
Well, Singletary's on that list too now.
Okay, here we go. So, but anyway, no, he's definitely a legendary Bear player. The story behind the story of this, Conrad, is fantastic. He's friends with Eric Watts. They're going to come down. Obviously, this is January, maybe right after his season was over. But on obviously on a Wednesday, but he didn't tell the Bears he was coming. Came, and I think it's this episode. If not, he was on. I think he was there. I don't know, twice, but he got in the ring and press slammed somebody out of the ring. The Chicago Bears went absolutely nuts. their ownership and management called Urlacher's. This is all the after effect of it. Called his agent. They got professional wrestling put into Brian's contract that specifically said he's prohibited from participating in professional wrestling. They were not happy at all. Brian didn't care. And he told us that. We're like, hey, is there anything we can do? Nope. Okay. We're going for it. I think there's a shot of him press slamming Jonny Fairplay that went around the horn for quite a while.
There's a note in the Observer. There's a lot of talk amongst the wrestlers now regarding pay. The locker room was pretty happy with most guys making $250 to $500 per shot, but then they see the money being spent on Fairplay, negotiating with Nash, and nobody's been able to even get a $50 or $100 raise. And the regulars, who weren't making much to begin with, are now being cut back 25% in income because they've eliminated a live show each week. Do you remember this being something that you were talking to a lot of folks about? I mean, I know that you got all this stuff going on behind the scenes, but on show day and in between shows, is your phone's just blowing up, people wanting to talk to you about the financial piece?
Yes. I mean, there was an era probably starting a few months before this, all the way through going to Orlando, Fox Sports shows. And then we were really dividing time on Wednesdays and Thursdays, trying to get on the Fox Sports show. Then we moved to the monthlies until we got on the Spike. The conversations about money never stopped, Conrad, because I got it, because you could kind of see that. I can't say we were the obvious signs of being successful, but we had been into this game long enough. And now we were producing shows that were on Fox Sports. We were moved into the monthly pay-per-views. We were bringing in a Hall and Nash. You could tell that that we weren't going out of business and that there was dollars to go around, and everybody wanted their share. I mean, everybody from the refs, the veterans, the young guys, guys that were local in Nashville, and then we ended up cultivating a crowd of locals in Orlando. Everybody wanted more money. I got it, but man, it was a constant battle. It really was a constant battle.
Another note here, TNA is officially, after being talked about from the beginning, open up a wrestling school with Terry Taylor and Scott D'Amore as head instructors. Talk to me about the school and why were Terry and Scott the right guys?
Well, where were we going to open it up?
It doesn't say. It just says you're going to open one.
Yeah, because I think we had different conversations, because Scott, always had Windsor right across the bridge from Detroit. He always had a school. I think to this day, he still has some kind of infrastructure. Him and Terry go way, way back to the WCW days. So this would have been prior to going to Orlando, because we always, say maybe not year one, but we had always talked about creating a TNA wrestling school, because we had the ability to have, guest teachers and coaches and seminars. And I think Scott always wanted to do it, but we wanted to kind of create an infrastructure that we could have. I don't want to say developmental, that's too much, but a pipeline to develop talent. And so there was a conversation. And again, it was a natural for Scott and Terry to kind of spearhead that.
The new match being talked about to headline the April 4th pay-per-view. As a reminder, the moving narrative here in the Observer is that you guys are going to do a pay-per-view on 04/04/04. This will be your first 3-hour pay-per-view. Of course, we know that doesn't wind up happening, but it's discussed here that you're going to defend the title against Randy Savage, to the point where you even mention Savage's name on air and call him a recording artist, as they're using a version of one of his rap songs for some new theme music here on the show. And I guess maybe they're teasing feuds with Jonny Fairplay against Rupert and Roddy Piper. Of course, Rupert made Survivor All-Stars. He can't do anything until that show's over. But I'm fascinated by the whole okay, we can't get Hulk. Maybe we'll get Savage. I know it wound up not happening. I mean, eventually Randy Savage did come in, but do you remember pitching him on a TNA title match or an NWA title match, yourself and Randy Savage in April?
So Bill Edwards was his music producer, who also, that was one of the guys that we brought in to potentially be investor. I don't remember exactly where Randy's music career at this time was, but I believe it was absolutely his priority, and that's kind of the direction we were going, or he was on the tail end of it.
Man came out in October of 03.
Okay, so we're right around the corner. So we're talking 04, which it's one of those unique dates and easy to market around at the beginning of the month and everything that goes with it. Again, the growth period, the really embryonic stage of us just trying to scratch and claw and find our way. Obviously it didn't work out, but Savage in a single main event on a pay-per-view in 04. Not a bad choice, I'll say.
And when you take off your promoter hat and you take off your wrestler hat and you put on your fan hat, where does Savage rank on your all-time list?
You tweeted something earlier when him and Davey Boy,
him and Dynamite Kid tearing it up in an old WWF match from '85. I was like, oh, Jeff would love this.
So he had been in Tennessee 3 months prior to that, or less than a year.
Yeah.
That's the Savage I remember.
Yes.
That's my favorite. Him and Lawler, the loser leave. I'll just call it the Lawler program. Randy, he wouldn't be the macho man of the superpowers. Just a little bit before that, and not saying that he had slowed down by that time, but he was reckless and single, and prior to having Liz and all that, he was, to me, that in my mind. And look, everybody sees the lens of a talent. There's some people to this day come up to me and really just see me as 95 Double J and Brian James as sidekick. I mean, that's how they were introduced to me, and they just still have it in their mind. They have no idea about Slapnuts or King of the Mountain. Or they may have an idea about it, but they don't care about it. They want me to sign everything. Double J, Jeff Jarrett, ain't I great? Just whatever it may be. That Macho Man of 85 was huge. I mean, Fargo, Lawler, Macho Man. They're right. I mean, at the very tip top. And probably as far as, so Lawler and Fargo were like super childhood, but now kind of wanting to break in, Conrad. And this is pretty cool for me to kind of go back in this. So I had refereed, maybe one or two matches, but the summer before that, I got to see a lot of Savage matches. So early, maybe I hadn't made the conscious decision that I want to wrestle, but I certainly loved it. And, sit in my dad's basement and watch Hulk Hogan and Michael St. John do the VO and a Moondog video and a Dutch Mantel, Bill Dunn, all those music videos and all that. But Savage in that era, his in-ring reckless work that I had no idea how to put that into words. I just knew this guy is off his rocker, but he will kick your ass in a heartbeat, and got a cool way of telling you he's going to do it in his promo. I loved him. What a talent.
What a talent indeed. I think he's probably most famous, at least in my fandom, with that classic Intercontinental Championship. And I'm happy to announce that I will be bringing that title with me to StarCast Down Under, April 11th to April 14th, Ballarat, Victoria, Australia. It's our first ever international StarCast. Bret Hart is going to be there, and so will Mickey James, Shelton Benjamin, Chris Masters, and a whole host of others. Follow us over on Twitter at StarCast to keep up with all of the updates. But we've already announced 2 wrestling shows, an all women's show brought to us by Mickey James called Her, Her, And how about this? Bret Hart's Australian Stampede, a supercard of wrestlers from around the world. And it wouldn't be Starcast without some stage shows. How about this one? Hitman, An Evening with Bret Hart. We're going to actually watch the 30th anniversary of his WrestleMania 10 match against his brother Owen Hart, one of his favorite matches of all time. I'm going to get to pick his brain, just like you see me do on a lot of our other podcasts. But maybe the most fun we're going to have is the Q&A. That's right. You get to ask Bret questions, and you'll get to meet him. You'll get to greet him. You'll get to meet all your favorites and see the matches and the shows. Starcast coming to Australia. Tickets are on sale now. STARRCAST.com for more information. That's starcast.com. And don't forget, there's 2 R's in Starcast. Well, let's talk about our main event here. We got Don Callis beating Eric Watts in a battle for superpower. Goldilocks is going to give Watts a low blow after the Naturals, which are Andy Douglas and Chase Stevens, come out to provide a distraction. Meltzer would say it wasn't good at all. But with all the wrestlers at ringside cheerleading, it did get a lot of heat. The wrestlers were all handcuffed to each other. Jarrett handcuffed Mike Tenay to the guardrail, which screwed up the announcing, since Tenay at first couldn't see the monitor because of how he was cuffed. Eventually, they got the monitor to where Tenay could see it, and the power went out. Later, there's a big brawl in the area that shook up the guardrail, and Tenay injured his wrist, which may have actually been broken because he couldn't get away. Man, this was a hot crowd with all the wrestlers out there. It added a lot to it. Maybe it was a good idea in theory to handcuff Tenay, but how badly was his wrist hurt? And what do you remember about the freaking power going out? I can only imagine what this is like for you. I mean, here you are trying to run the show, and now something like that happens. Goodness gracious.
Connie, there's pressure and then there's pressure. That's why you have a generator and a backup generator and all that. But at ringside, and when it says the power went out, because we had a couple of different episodes, we never lost transmission to my recollection. And that's why you got to have the redundancy and you got to have the backup and the jennies and all that kind of stuff. But I also think the brawling at ringside, it's just as simple as talent stepping on cords and
yes,
just the most simplistic thing, which is very aggravating to Mike and Don, to say the least. But us maybe crossing the line that Mike's a great team player and okay, I'll do this. I'm not my favorite thing to do, but I'll do it. And then all of a sudden he gets roughed up. That photo of Mike being pissed, probably a shoot this night. Just look at Professor there, the mean face. But man, he could do that working, but when he did it shooting, it wasn't real fun. But great sport, always the best team player. But I believe he roughed up, and hell, any of us, when you're handcuffed, you legit can't go anywhere, and you are vulnerable to other crazy talent around you. So you have to sometimes let it be known, hey, don't F with me. I'm trying to do my job here.
We got to talk a little bit about the Gathering here. Francis Reyes asked a great question. Did you see the Gathering as the future TNA long-term talent at the time? And what a group this is. As a reminder, you've got the Raven character sort of as the leader, Julio De Niro, CM Punk, and Alexis Lurie, who we know these days as Mickey James.
Yes.
Man, what a cast you have here. This is a really top tier level, considering with the benefit of hindsight, what they all went on to do. I mean, you got 3 bona fide Hall of Famers in there. This is a big group. Did you think that they had that potential at the time?
I'd be lying if I said, oh yeah. You know who, out of the whole group, Julio, he might have gotten, I don't know. I mean, Julio was a bump taking, a hell of a talent. Both him and Punk were young, and Alexa Lurie, there's that clip that floats around from time to time where she jumped me and beat the hell out of me, and then she absolutely took it back, and I stuffed her in a trash can and took bumps all over the place. But Raven he's one of those guys that kind of knows how to give a faction a dynamic, and it worked. I mean, it just, the New Church was a faction with Father Jim Mitchell and early TNA that was good. The Gathering was good. Triple X. I'm talking about teams that were bigger than 3. Of course, America's Most Wanted and, all that. But you look at Team Canada, you kind of look at the heel factions that came out of those early years. And it goes without saying, I certainly was blessed with a boatload of talent. But I think the Gathering is one of those groups, Francis, that don't get mentioned enough. It's that simple, but very talented. And yeah, I mean, did I think they were 3 Hall of Famers? Probably not. But did I think they were really good talent? Yes.
Dylan Leahy wants to know, was there ever any discussion of trying to keep Punk and sign him to a long-term contract? I mean, of course, a lot of fans discover his WWF work, and then they sort of go back and catch some of his Ring of Honor stuff or his TNA stuff. He was here very early for you guys. Who do you remember being a big proponent of his, and were there any big critics? Because I know it was controversial at the time. Oh, this guy's wrestling in basketball shorts, as silly as that sounds.
So the question, because you cut out just a little bit, I don't know if it's about Wi-Fi years. What was your question?
I'm just wondering, when you think back to CM Punk's time in TNA,
yeah,
who were the big advocates on the inner circle, if you will, of his, and who were the detractors, if you can recall?
I can't say there, but there was either way any huge advocates or detractors. I would, well, the simple situation is here. It's Raven driven. They were Raven's group, more so than anything. And, the turnover of talent, like I said, Julio was Baltimore, Punk was Chicago, Alexis Lurie would have probably been Baltimore.
That's right.
All that. Raven, Atlanta. So it depended upon what month, a budgetary concern would, how many flights are we going to pay to bring in one group, where in the New Church were no flights probably, or maybe one, depending on what faction. So more so than anything, so much of Wednesday nights were budget driven, no matter how we slice it and dice it. They just were.
Here's a friend of the show, Ed. He wants to know, at some point in the weekly pay-per-view era, I remember a super cheap deal, like a penny or $1 for a weekly show. How does a deal like that affect business with TNA and pay-per-view providers? Do both sides see this as a loss leader to drum up future business for both? I don't remember that. Tell me about that. Were there dollar and penny episodes?
I think we, on occasion, but you got to remember the pay-per-view company. So they're going to collect a 1 cent. It's all right. Theirs, whatever. It was a promotional marketing gimmick. I don't know that we did that any more than maybe if we had a month with 5 Wednesdays. Maybe there were some months that we did without really advertising it, that we did a quote unquote tape show, but we had filmed enough in the can to do one, maybe different scenarios, but it wouldn't have been an in-demand decision. It would have been our decision. Are we willing to, run a 5th Wednesday, quote unquote, for a penny, but it's not going to cost us anymore. So a marketing deal to get them to sample the product. Again, the days of marketing a wrestling show, they just have evolved. When you think back, I'll call it to the territory days. We're raising prices because the world champion's here. That mentality would never fly today. Now it's just now you got to do a VIP golden circle. Just the marketing tactics. They're there. They're just skinned differently nowadays.
Well, let's talk about something we're going to try to skin differently next week. A conversation about Jerry Lawler, one of your heroes in professional wrestling. He's going to be our topic next week. The King of Memphis himself. We'll talk about his early impact on you and your personal life and your professional life, what it was like teaming with him, what it was like learning from him, all the major moves in your career, and how Jerry has had an impact on you. We'll be discussing all of that next week. But I do have one last question for you. Before we get to it, I want to remind everybody, if you're looking to grow your business and you try to target men that are 25 to 54 years old, well, there's no better place to do it than right here on our program. Check out advertisewithjarrett.com. We'd love to have your questions about Jerry the King Lawler. It's easy to get involved and ask questions on Twitter. It's at MyWorldPod on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. Just be sure to hit us up at MyWorldPod. You can also follow Jeff Jarrett and keep up with what's going on with him at Real Jeff Jarrett. I am at Hey, it's Conrad on Twitter, at Hey, it's Conrad Thompson over on Instagram. But the easiest, cheapest, best way to support the show is to check us out on YouTube. It's My World on YouTube.com. And Jeff, I want to go live in the new year. I want us to have a concerted effort to try to grow our YouTube. And, we do have a lot of booking sheets and things that we've been gifted with from other people who were in the room. Maybe we should show some of those on YouTube and sort of break down another piece and give a peek behind the curtain. If you haven't already, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, turn on the notifications bell at myworldonyoutube.com. You've seen lots of flashes if you've been watching on YouTube today of new merch that's available. You can check that out right now. It's boxofgimmicks.com. That's boxofgimmicks.com. But one last question, Jeff, and we'll put a button on today's episode. I know we went into overtime talking about January of 04, but big listener, and I consider a friend of the show.
Oh boy.
Tom, or Mr.
Tom
Campbell, as he may be known in some circles,
Oh,
wants to know, have you given any more thought to the name Total Nonstop Arseholes?
He did not write that, did he?
Yeah. It's a fair question. He's a listener of the program, looking to get your feedback. Total Nonstop Arseholes. That, of course, comes from listener Tom Campbell as a suggestion for your still unnamed faction.
So
got Karen, got Jeff,
so Conrad,
got Sanjay, got Jay.
You want a little soundbite here, pal?
Got Sydenham. Yeah.
Come on now. Tom.
Mr. Campbell.
He don't start. No, I mean, you're going to get me tickled, but he is a blithering idiot.
Really?
Tom Campbell is mentally unstable. He has, I've heard, and I don't like to joke about it, but serious mental health issues. And he thinks it's all kind of fun and games, if you will. And Conrad, we didn't really touch on the Jay Lethal thing, but look, Rampage, Dynamite, Collision, we're having these team meetings and all this, but to me,
right,
it's pretty simple, the situation that's gone down.
Okay.
Jay didn't win a single match in the Continental Classic. Not one.
Oh,
not one.
That's not good.
And so when you have that, and then he comes kind of groveling back to the group and expects us to kind of just keep marching on. I'm a sports guy, so you look at any sports team and you kind of look around, and if you have a guy that went and did his thing and he entered that tournament, and then you come back and we're just supposed to say, hey, all is well. And Karen's doing that too. Oh, all's well. We're back as a unit. And I'm just like, now, wait a minute. Sanjay saying, hey, let's get back on the same page. At the end of the day, I don't know how Jay puts the toothpaste back in the tube. He lost every match. He is bringing the unit down. I think I have said over on any AEW interview and certainly any My World interview, I think Satnam has the most potential, has the most upside of any talent on the entire AEW roster. They don't manufacture 7'4" professional basketball players with superhuman strength, a ton of charisma, young, youthful, eager to learn whatever I'm trying to teach him. And Jay wants to slide back in here. I think Karen has, oh, we got to give the name of the team, and that's kind of losing focus. And we need to do a photo shoot, merch, and all this. And then Tom's having fun with it. Conrad, I believe it's time for a new day. I think it's time for Jay to get his walking papers.
What?
Yeah, I do. And I think, enough fun and games have been kind of done with this. I'm a winner. I've had the most success in my career being the leader of the group, not as a cog. And candidly, 12-time world heavyweight champion, 2-time Hall of Famer. It's pretty simple. I've had my most success as a singles wrestler. I beat their, top guy himself, Dax, beat him one-on-one, beat Jeff Hardy one-on-one.
Kenny Omega. You put Kenny Omega in the hospital. Well documented.
Okay. So, Connie, I think it's real simple. We need to get this to come to a close. We need Tom Candle to just step aside with his fun and games. If he wants to do a legitimate poll, he knows full and well we're not doing total nonstop arseholes. If he wants to come up with some legitimate marketing names and throw it on the table, I saw one in there, something called Lethal Outlaw. The only problem with that is Lethal's involved. He's going to be out of the group sooner rather than later. So if he wants to come up with a group, new name for me, Satnam, Karen, and Sanjay, I'm fine with that. But I just had to get that off my chest.
Well, I'll tell you, like a wise man, third generation promoter told me when I got ready to promote my one and only ever wrestling show. He said, let's not overthink it. It's Ric Flair and others. So what if the name of your group was just Jeff Jarrett and others?
We're on to something. The Last Outlaw and his posse and his gang. The Last Outlaw gang.
Yeah, I like that. But the idea that it was Lethal Outlaw, my man, you're top billing. Everybody knows that.
Thank you.
Alphabetically, it goes JEFF first.
I knew you would start chuckling on this.
No, I don't listen. I thought it was all fun and games. I'll be honest. I thought you and Tom just were. I didn't realize they were really hurt feelings, and Jay Lethal was getting kicked out. Like,
well, Jay needs to go. That's beside itself. But do you know Tom personally?
No, I've never met him in real life, but we've exchanged DMs. But like, we don't get together for tea or nothing.
Well, he tried to bring tea, and he tries to be a lovely chap, but he ain't all there. He is not all there.
I didn't realize that.
Yep.
Well, thoughts and prayers for Tom, and boy, I hate it for old Jay Lethal. First Ric Flair turns his back on him, and now you have to. Oh well, we'll see you next week when we talk about the King, Jerry Lawler, right here on My World.
Peace.